sponsors of weather on GB News.
Variety Cruises have been sailing since 1942, and thanks to them, you could set sail in 2025. You have the chance to win a 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. With your flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, you can choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. You'll also win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash that you can use to make this summer spectacular. We'll also treat you to these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Over the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor James Schneider. Coming up on the show, Philip Davies, MP, will be shining a light on the latest from Westminster in my political spotlight. My first Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? We'll also be bringing you what's happening there at 4 when the race kicks off. Then my difficult conversation. Joining me in the studio, barrister, writer and campaigner Steven Barrett. In a few moments' time, I'll be mucking the week with GB News presenter Darren Grimes. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much, and good afternoon from the newsroom just after 3 o'clock. And we start with our top story of the day. The King says he is shocked and horrified by a mass knife attack in a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which killed 6 people. A 40-year-old male suspect was known to police. However, the incident is not believed to be terror-related. That attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the alleged attacker and shot him dead. Police Commissioner Karen Webb says a major investigation is now underway.
Police have
secured the crime scene, which you can imagine is expansive inside a very big, busy commercial shopping centre in Sydney. And the crime scene remains ongoing, and it will remain ongoing for a number of days.
In other news, commandos from Iran have landed on a container ship in a helicopter and seized the vessel off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The vessel involved is believed to have links to Israel and comes amid rising tensions in the region and threats from Iran. The Islamic Republic has called Israel's presence in the UAE a threat and warned it would close the region's shipping lane if provoked. Meanwhile, as tensions in the Middle East continue, the US president has said that he fears an Iranian attack on America's allies will come, he says, sooner rather than later. However, Joe Biden had this warning for Tehran.
We are devoted to the defense of Israel. We will support Israel. We will help defend Israel, and Iran will not succeed. Thank you very much.
The Iranian government promised revenge for an Israeli airstrike on its consulate in Damascus that killed some of its top commanders. In response, though, the US has said it is now moving additional assets to the Middle East, and countries including India, France and Poland have also warned their citizens against travelling to the region. In other news, a new poll has found that President Biden has nearly erased Donald Trump's advantage. That poll by the New York Times and Siena College found that 45% say they would vote for the current president, compared to Mr. Trump's 46%. It means they're now virtually tied, with Joe Biden's standing among floating voters improving. However, despite a strong economy, almost 80% rated economic conditions as either fair or poor. More than 29 people are still stranded in cable cars above a mountain in southern Turkey. That's after one of the cabins hit a broken pole and ripped open, sending some of the passengers falling to the ground. One person died in that collision and several others are injured. Officials shared footage from the ongoing rescue operation, you can see there if you're watching on television, involving more than 600 search and rescue personnel, 8 helicopters and even a cargo plane. Back here in the UK, Greater Manchester Police say that they have found what they believe to be human remains of a young baby in Wigan. 5 people have been arrested on suspicion of concealing a death and unlawful burial. The group, aged between 20 and 70, have been bailed. The Chancellor says he is ready to cut taxes and to bet on growth. That's after the economy grew by 0.1% in February. The Office for National Statistics has also revised January's figure, pushing it up to 0.3%. Writing in the Daily Express, Jeremy Hunt says Britain has done the hard yards and that the economy, he says, is bouncing back. But Labour says most people aren't feeling any of the benefits, with low growth and higher taxes under the Conservative government. The Chief Executive of NHS England has called out what she's called unacceptable abusive behaviour that doctors and nurses face in the workplace. Amanda Pritchard says the health service needs to stamp out abusive behaviour and that it shouldn't be exempt from its own Me Too movement. According to a major survey, there were 80,000 reports of NHS staff in England being sexually harassed while at work last year. Reports were more prevalent among ambulance staff, nursing staff and healthcare assistants. Labour has claimed that Britain's roads now have 100 times as many potholes as there are craters on the moon. Figures estimate that there were more than 100 million potholes in the UK last year, which can cause serious damage to cars. The party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says Rishi Sunak is living on another planet after failing to fix the problem. The government, though, says it is investing billions of pounds to improve our roads. And there are just a few hours to go until one of horse racing's biggest events of the year, the Grand National, but there have been some changes. New safety measures are in place, meaning 6 fewer horses are taking part in the event. It's after 4 horses died last year. However, campaigners say changes to this afternoon's event are nothing more than a PR stunt after 2 other horses died just yesterday. On the track, though, it will be as competitive as ever for the £1 million prize. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. More in half an hour. Until then, do sign up to GB News Alerts. Just scan that code there on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, first, today's big story. 6 people have been killed in a knife attack at a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. Several others were injured, including a 9-month-old baby that's undergone surgery. All very sad. The baby's mother reportedly died in hospital. Witnesses have also described the terrifying scenes.
I didn't see him properly. I was running. But it was insane. It was insanity. I wasn't expecting it.
Some guy running around stabbing people. Seems pretty random. Probably a terrorist attack.
We saw all these people running towards us, and then we heard a shot.
Well, the knife man was known to police, but the attack is not believed to be terror-related. Police Commissioner Karen Webb gave this update earlier.
At 3:30 this afternoon, a male with a knife entered the Westfield shopping centre at Bondi Junction and attacked a number of people. Police were called and a police officer responded and faced that man and neutralised the threat within that shopping centre. Other police attended and helped witnesses, shopkeepers and others that were in the shopping centre move on from the shopping centre. As a result, there were 4 female women deceased in the shopping centre and 1 male, and subsequently another female passed away in hospital, taking it to a total of 6, plus the death of the offender. There are about 8 people in hospitals around Sydney being treated for different injuries associated with being attacked in the hospital, at the shopping centre, including a 9-month-old infant that has been in surgery. Police have secured the crime scene, which you can imagine is expansive inside a very big, busy commercial shopping centre in Sydney. And the crime scene remains ongoing, and it will remain ongoing for a number of days. The shopping centre will in fact be closed tomorrow for trade, and Westfields will work with police to assist in the removal of vehicles, etc., from the shopping centre tomorrow. But in the meantime, the shopping centre will remain a crime scene. Later this evening, we became aware of who we believe the offender is, and we believe that he is a 40-year-old man. However, we are waiting to formally identify him, and we cannot speculate yet on his identification. But let me assure you that we are confident that there is no ongoing risk, and we are dealing with one person who is now deceased. Are there any questions?
What do you know about this 40-year-old man at this stage?
Well, I actually will hand over to the Deputy Commissioner who's acting for investigations about... we know a little bit about this person, but as I said, we're waiting to confirm his identification. And if in fact it is the person that we believe it is, then we don't have fears for that person holding an ideation.
Well, authorities say that many more might have been killed, and had it not been for the actions of the lone police officer who confronted the attacker, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has thanked the country's brave police and first responders.
Today, Bondi Junction was the scene of shocking violence, but it was also witness to the humanity and the heroism of our fellow Australians. Our brave police, our first responders, and of course everyday people who could never have imagined that they would face such a moment. And some of the footage is quite extraordinary.
So the royal family have responded to the terrible news. The King has released a statement saying, "My wife and I were utterly shocked and horrified to hear of the tragic stabbing incident in Bondi. Our hearts go out to the families and loved ones of those who have been so brutally killed during such a senseless attack. Whilst details of these shocking circumstances are still emerging, our thoughts are also with those who were involved in the response, and we give thanks for the bravery of first responders and emergency services and the Prince and Princess of Wales." They said this: "We're shocked and saddened by the terrible events in Sydney earlier today. Our thoughts are with all those affected, including the loved ones of those lost and the heroic emergency responders who risked their own lives to save others." Well, coming up, Darren Grimes will be making light of this week's top stories in Muck the Week. Then at 3:20, my hot topic will be a round-table discussion on the ongoing trans debate. I've got three brilliant guests joining me in the studio. You will not want to miss that. At 3:35, Yuri Geller will be live to discuss the latest from Israel. And joining me to shine a light in the political hot seat today is Philip Davies, MP. He's my political spotlight at 3:45. That is on the way in this hour. Tell me what you think, as ever, on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GB News. But it's now time for Muck the Week, and what a busy one it's been. Royal Mail accused Border Force of failing to prevent counterfeit stamps flooding into Britain from China, resulting in customers being hit with a £5 penalty. I can't remember the last time I used a stamp. In the meantime, Alan Bates wants to see post office bosses jailed and is fundraising to bring about private prosecutions if sub-postmasters have failed by the inquiry into the Horizon scandal, which saw them wrongly accused of stealing money, a horrendous state of affairs which led some went and committed suicide as a result, which is very sad. This week also saw Welsh Labour confusing classism with racism by claiming a 4-hour or 4-day working week is racist. How ridiculous. So I wrote a piece about it in the Daily Mail. Turns out that many of the jobs which cannot be done from home or reduced to 4 days a week are more likely jobs done by ethnic minorities. But that's more to do with social class than race. Hardly racist, which is a form of hate. More like some liberal elites trying to hide their privilege by using race as an excuse.
The greatest curse for people of colour are white liberals, because white liberals are there to treat black people as victims. And they make a fortune out of this. You know, they're all saying, well, the problem is this, and our job is to hold their hands and help them through. And I really have an aversion to do that. And I like to remind people of colour, we are courageous people that came to this country, and therefore we don't need to feel that we're pioneers. Exactly.
Exactly. But listen, easy fix, make all jobs 4 days a week. Simple. Dr Hilary Cass doubled down in her Cass Review, which was published this week. She renewed her concerns that private gender clinics were exploiting a loophole, which meant that despite an NHS ban on prescribing hormones and puberty blockers to under 18s, private gender clinics continue to do so. The report also exposed gender clinics for refusing to confirm how many young people who started their treatments had changed their minds. So the Health Secretary stepped in and demanded that the NHS reveal the fate of some 9,000 children treated at the Tavistock Clinic. It'll be interesting to see the results. Why would you suppress that information unless you've got something to hide? J.K. Rowling also refused to forgive the treacherous and very average actors she gave a platform to in her Harry Potter films after they turned their backs on her over her correct stance that trans women are not women and her wish to protect female-only spaces. On that list was Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson. J.K. said, even if you don't feel ashamed for cheerleading for what now looks like severe medical malpractice, where's your sense of self-preservation? The bandwagon you hopped on so gladly is hurling towards a cliff. The consequences of this scandal will play out for decades. The Greater Manchester Police have decided to investigate Angela Rayner, who says that she will step down if it is found that she has committed a criminal offence. Well, we saw what happened when Keir and the Durham Police dealt with Beergate, so I wait with bated breath to hear the findings. Watch this space. And, of course, lots of things going on. The Grand National kicks off today, which has already seen 2 horses die, and a flesh-rotting zombie drug is now flooding these streets in the UK. It's been a mucky old week. Joining me to get down and dirty is presenter Darren Grimes. It's been mucky, isn't it?
Oh, it's been grimy.
Oh, really grimy. I was going to do it, but I let you, Darren. Why not? So what do you make of all of this, then? We've got a lot going on.
We've got so much going on. You know, on that first story at the top of the hour there, when you were talking about Australia, I worry, Nana, that the reason they're not releasing the identity of this man is because they don't want to be accused of racism.
What do you think?
That's what I'm concerned about. But that leads neatly into your piece for the Mail this week.
Yeah.
Which was very good, by the way.
Thank you, Darren.
But you were arguing basically that to basically try and pigeonhole people by the colour of their skin and not base it around class, because there will be black and white people who you could put this metric onto and argue that actually, you know, a 4-day working week would hit them harder because they're doing jobs which can't be taken down to 4 days a week or working from home or whatever else it might be. So there are so many ways in which actually you are absolutely bang on, that class is the biggest predictor of disadvantage in this country.
Well, you've seen the film Trading Places.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy and what's his face? And they swapped places, they had exactly the same circumstance and they ended up in the same position, irrespective of colour.
And I think Britain, I'm sure you'd agree with this, I think Britain is a country where if you actually work hard, you can get somewhere in life.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's harder for people who are born working class, but I don't think it's harder for people who are born with a particular skin colour.
No.
I just don't think that comes into it.
No, I don't think it does, unless you want to go along. I love what the black farmer said. He was very good.
He was brilliant.
So good. That, you know, it is true. I do say to a lot of black people, listen, why are you believing this claptrap that you're disadvantaged? There's literally nothing that I can't do that you can't do. It's more likely things that you won't be allowed in because you're white.
Well, it's much
like
easier.
That theatre performance.
Well, exactly, yeah, in Soho. It's much easier, though, isn't it, to turn around and say, well, I'm a victim. I can't possibly do X, Y, and Z because of my skin colour or because of my immutable characteristics. That's laziness. That's a cop-out. So I'm afraid these people are perpetuating victimhood, and that's what I reject in the strongest possible terms.
Yeah, same. Now, what do you make of the Cass review now really sort of doubling down on its findings? Because, really, Dr Hilary Cass had to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I actually found some of the language in the Cass report to be almost too sympathetic to the other side. I think actually she was trying to be as balanced as she possibly could, so I understand that. But despite that, the report, I think, was utterly damning for those who have pushed on to children a form of experimental medicalisation in which actually, in the name of gender affirmation, we've seen children be moved on to these generally irreversible treatments that are going to impact them for the rest of their lives. So J.K. Rowling, absolutely right to say this is going to go on for decades, where I think there's going to be, like we had with the blood scandal in the NHS, I think there's going to be repercussions that are felt through the NHS for years to come, in which doctors, healthcare professionals, I say healthcare in inverted commas because I think it's ideology actually, Nana, are going to be held to account over the years to come for what they've done to young kids.
Well, it'll be interesting to find out what the results are for those who went through the process and then turned away. And I don't understand why they didn't want to give that information.
Yeah.
So they withheld the information. So now we'll hopefully get to find out.
Absolutely.
Exactly what's going on there. And very briefly, and finally, what was the last topic we discussed?
So, last topic we were discussing...
As you were listening.
Yes, I was listening. I was listening. It was your column, and it was... we did that, and then it was...
Oh, yes, the final thing. Oh, yes, the flesh-eating...
Zombies. Right, yeah, I do worry, actually, that we'll end up like America with the fentanyl crisis, because I think actually we're moving in a direction which is almost too liberal and too accepting of drugs. I think all of these people coming out and saying, well, the best thing we need to do is legalise them so they're safer and all the rest of it. No way, Jose.
Yeah.
I think even medicalising marijuana, for example...
I think that's a gateway.
Exactly, so do I.
It's the opening gateway. And also a lot of them is very strong and can cause psychosis. Darren Grimes, when are you on later on?
6 p.m, Nana, 6 p.m. We've got Emma Webb in, who's an absolute peach. So it's going to be a good show.
Lovely. Darren Grimes, lovely to talk to you. Stay tuned after my show for the Saturday 5. Darren Grimes will be on that. Right, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online, and on digital radio. Coming up, Uri Geller will be live to discuss the latest in Israel. But next, my hot topic, we'll be having a roundtable discussion, the ongoing trans debate. This is GB News.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
I'm delighted to welcome Andrew Doyle, who was behind that comedy event in Edinburgh last night. Andrew, great stuff. Now, what's the mood like on the ground in Scotland?
Well, I mean, certainly at last night's event at Comedy Unleashed in Edinburgh, there was a sense of relief that we're all gathering and we're all laughing at this stuff. We're just laughing at the way that the police have approached this, the way the SNP have approached it. Various people from various of the protected characteristics that you must not mock or offend were mocking each other. It was just a reminder that actually these are just jokes. We're just having a laugh. We're just exercising our creative freedom and our freedom of speech. The mood, I think, is generally one of disbelief that Humza Yousaf and the SNP have pushed through this crazy authoritarian draconian law, irrespective of all the criticisms that have come from senior members of the police, members of the judiciary, members of the public, the QCs, various bodies have all said this is not workable because the police have said that they will investigate absolutely every complaint. And although they've said they won't target comedians, they're going to end up investigating comedians if the complaints come in, because that's what they've pledged to do.
Well, that's it. So, conceivably, and this is how ridiculous and unenforceable it is, if someone had reported you last night in that audience, the police would have had to have investigated you, wouldn't they?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And whether they would have taken it any further will come down to the individual police officer. We had Siobhan Brown from the SNP on the BBC the other day, and she was asked very clearly about this. You know, who makes the decision what to investigate and what not to investigate, how to take it forward? She said it's a matter of individual police judgment. Now, the problem with that, of course, is there are activists within the police force in Scotland. We've caught them at it before. Now, the fact that they're not going to pursue J.K. Rowling after she challenged them is partly probably just cowardice, because she's got a lot of power and clout behind her. But if it was a complaint about us, a bunch of comedians in a small room in Edinburgh, they might well have taken it further.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, it's fast approaching 25 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for my roundtable discussion. I know you're thinking there aren't any round tables in the studio. No, I know, but just, you know, suspend the air of disbelief and imagine that this rectangular bench is actually a round table. And this week's hot topic, well, it's been quite a week regarding the ongoing debate surrounding trans issues. The CAS report has accused the NHS of failing children struggling with their gender identity. J.K. Rowling has stirred controversy by challenging new hate speech laws and raining disputes with Harry Potter stars over transgender rights. So joining me now is television personality Jessica Alves. Also transgender teacher and journalist Debbie Hayton, and GP and medical writer Dr. Rennie Hundekamp. Right, so I thought I'd start with the CAS report. I'm going to start with you, Debbie Hayton. Your thoughts, the CAS report, which came out and said, actually, you know, people are exploiting the loophole that exists that enables private clinics to continue to prescribe hormones and so on and so forth.
Well, I welcome the CAS report. It's been a long time coming. We now have an independent clinician, an expert in her field, actually saying what people have known all along, that this has been an uncontrolled and dangerous experiment on children. And the burden of proof has to move from people having to prove that it's dangerous to others having to prove that it's safe. It isn't safe and things need to change.
Now, do you think that children should be allowed to transition or go through some level of social transitioning before they're 18, say at school or whatever?
Well, I think it's what you mean by social transition. Should people be constrained to sexist gender norms? I don't think that. But at the same point, we shouldn't be pretending to children that they are really the other sex, because that's what's been going on. Children have been told that they're really the opposite sex, and they're not.
Jessica Alves, what is your thoughts?
I agree that the CAS report is very accurate. The NHS has been failing treating transgender people for a long time. America, Brazil, Germany, they're well ahead of us. I'm a strong believer that hormone therapy is very effective, that is necessary to anyone who is transitioning, either from male to female and vice versa. The system failed at providing psychological assessment to those kids prior giving the hormonal treatment. I'm 40 years old. I started my transition 6 years ago in secret, taking hormones. But I wish that I started earlier because I don't have any shadow of doubt that in my mind, in my soul, in my body, I have always been a woman.
Dr. Renee, they're saying that a lot of the treatments, though, and the hormone therapies are experimental, and actually there's no real proof that they do. Well, they do affect your hormones, but there's no real proof that they're safe.
No, there's absolutely no real proof that they're safe. And actually what there is proof that actually they're damaging. So we know that if we leave a child to go through puberty, even when they are questioning their gender, up to 93% of them will actually settle with their own sex. Many of them will be gay, and they will get through it okay. And then we have a small proportion left to deal with as adults. What we do know is when we put them on puberty blockers, we take away that opportunity to work through whatever it is that's going on. Because the moment that a child goes on to puberty blockers, not only are they damaging their bones, their heart, their brain, they are also stopping that potential treatment of its own. And 95% of those kids on puberty blockers will go on to cross-sex hormones. So we're putting them on a train before they've had a chance to actually work through the angst of puberty. Puberty is an anxious time. So I know that Jessica says that she just knows it's good for people. The evidence doesn't say that. The evidence says that it's damaging, and that's why CAS has put the brakes on. And what I hope will happen is that doctors will now be less fearful for coming out and saying what's in their mind. Doctors have been watching this going on and are horrified. For the first time ever in a medical treatment, we have actually put aside the evidence and just treated people on feelings, and we've been harming them. Now we can say, well, no, hang on, I have some evidence.
Well, I want Jessica to respond, because you referred to something that Jessica said.
Yeah, I think that the medical system here have just been taking the words of the kids turning up into the office, just telling, hey, I'm actually a boy or a girl, and I'm unhappy with the gender assigned at birth. Doctor, do correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been taking hormones now for 6 years, and I am fully transitioned. If I don't take my hormones, I will get sick. So the hormones helps gives me a better lifestyle, also makes me healthier. But then every 6 months, I also need to have a blood test. Of course. So I have been having a rigorous assessment, not only psychological, but also having blood tests, seeing my GP regularly to see how is my liver, how is the rest of the function of my body.
Yeah, I get that, and I accept. And you know, I have no issue with that. You're an adult. You were 34
but we're talking about
when
kids
you started,
now.
but we were talking
about kids.
The other issue we don't know, Jessica, and you don't know this either, nor does any doctor, is those hormones you're taking are designed to work on female cells in a body. You don't have any of those. You have male cells.
My chromosomes, it's something that I can't change. I change everything else, but the chromosomes
But
is
the point is we don't know what flooding those cells with estrogen for many, many years is going to do later down the line in terms of cancer and other illnesses. And there is no way of knowing that until we're far down the line.
It's interesting because people like myself, transgender people, have existed for 200 years.
Yes.
And the people back in the... People back in the 50s and 40s, they would be taking hormones from the counter or stealing from their mums and sisters and take it without any doctor prescription.
Well, I've got to... Debbie, you're sort of pulling a face with that.
Yeah, the hormone therapy, it's experimental, it's uncontrolled. They really do not know what they're doing, Jessica. I'm warning you about that. They may tell you these things, but nobody really knows, and we're all on a uneasy level between trying to take enough hormone to stop our bones decaying, which is what would happen, and not too much, because there's cancer risk, there's risk with blood clotting, there's all sorts of risks that they're just not explained to you.
Are you taking hormones?
Yes, I am.
Well, Well, I guess it's quite a personal question, but are you a fully transitioned person?
Yes.
Well, therefore, we must take the female hormones, so otherwise we don't live, we die, pretty much.
Well, no, but you could take male hormones.
Well, but I'm a woman. Why am I going to be taking male hormones for?
I know, but the point is, the reason you have to take hormones is obviously because you've had the sexual surgery, so you don't produce your own testosterone anymore. So there is an argument that you could take the natural hormone for your body that your body is used to using.
I think that we should stick to the conversation that we're talking about kids. We're adults here, so I'm 40 years old. I know exactly what I'm doing, and I'm really very happy. So going back to kids being treated under the NHS with medication without having a psychological appropriate assessment, that's absolutely wrong.
But
I
would
totally
you have them
agree with that.
transitioning before the age of 18?
Because administrating...
Would you have them transitioning before the age of 18? That's because this is part of the review as well. It wasn't just the hormones. Would you allow...
With the support of my family, I suppose I would. But then a doctor telling me, Jessica, you should know that you may have some health issues later down the line. And then when you're ready to have your gender reassignment surgery, your genitals won't be fully developed to have the penile inversion. And that is what this kid should be told.
Yeah, but you know what? They're not listening,
They're not big enough or
they won't
mature
listen.
enough to understand.
I've been through this with somebody going through it as a teenager, and they won't listen. And if you listen to some of the detransitioners, they will say to you, I would not have listened to anything you said because I was the truest trans person. Richie said this to me the other week, that existed. And 6 years later, he dramatically regretted that. Children are too young. Under 18, I would say under 25. After that, no problem at all.
Yeah.
Do what you want and live how you want to live.
Well, listen, live how you want to live. I wish we could just go on about this. This is not long enough for my roundtable discussion. We're going to try and find some more time for it in another day. But if you just join me, welcome on board. 33 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News coming up. We'll have a live update from Aintree. Of course, the Grand National is happening at 4. But first, your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
It's 3:33. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The King says he's shocked and horrified by a mass knife attack in a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which killed 6 people. A 40-year-old male suspect, who was known to police, has been apprehended. However, the incident is not believed to be related to terrorism. The attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the alleged attacker and shot him dead. The Australian Prime Minister praised her bravery and all the emergency responders who attended the scene. In other news, commandos from Iran have landed on a container ship in a helicopter and have seized the vessel off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The vessel involved is believed to have links to Israel and comes amid rising tensions in the regions and amid threats from Iran. The Islamic Republic has called Israel's presence in the UAE a threat and warned it would close the region's shipping lane if provoked. A new poll has found President Biden has nearly erased Donald Trump's advantage. The poll by the New York Times and Siena College found 45% say they'd vote for the president compared to Mr. Trump's 46%. It means they're now virtually tied, with Joe Biden standing amongst Democratic voters improving. However, despite a strong economy, almost 80% rated economic conditions as just fair or poor. And one of horse racing's biggest events of the year, the Grand National, will get underway shortly in about 25 minutes. New safety measures will be in place, meaning 6 fewer horses are taking part. It's after 4 died last year. However, campaigners' changes to this afternoon's event are nothing more than a PR stunt after 2 more horses died yesterday. On the track, though, it will be as competitive as ever for the £1 million prize. Well, you can sign up to the GB News alerts for the latest, scan the QR code on your screen, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. Still to come, Philip Davies MP will be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the latest from Westminster in my political spotlight. But next, Mr. Farah Uri Geller will join me to discuss the latest from Israel. Don't go anywhere.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
TfL bosses have come under fire after banning an advert... Oh, God. They've banned an advert for a comedy show because it had a hot dog on it, because that supposedly promotes obesity.
The comedian Ed Gamble has swapped the image of the fast food favourite in favour of a cucumber instead. And there's the cucumber on the plate.
So is the UK turning into a nanny state? Let's talk to former presenter of Fat Families, Steve Miller, and nutritionist Olivia Parry. Good to see you both this morning. Olivia, it's a comedy show. He's not promoting eating hot dogs, is he? Is this just a load of nonsense?
The thing is, we have a huge problem with overweight and obesity in this country. We're fourth in Europe. It's big business. Advertising for food companies is big business. They make so much money. You just have to switch on primetime TV to watch, food after food advertisements. And it's for the youngsters as well, who don't have the nutritional education. We're not taught cookery in school anymore. People go to college and to university, they don't know how to cook.
But
and it leads
forgive me for jumping in, Olivia. Forgive me for jumping in, but the whole point with this is it's an advert for a comedy show.
Yes, I know, but this is a wider issue.
I think it's a load of old tosh, to be quite honest with you. It's a hot dog. In fact, I wish they'd have put onions on the hot dog. A bit of what you fancy won't hurt you. You should eat 80-20 anyway. We talk about a nanny state. I actually think, arguably, we're becoming an authoritarian state. Opinions banned. Comedy banned. The England flag banned. It's like we've got to wear a virtual muzzle.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task. This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. 38 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. Now, Israel is currently anticipating potential retaliation from Iran or one of its allies following the killing of senior Iranian officer in Damascus. Several countries, including India, France and Russia, have cautioned against travel to the region, while the Israeli army remains vigilant and prepared for various scenarios. The government has not commented on the reports of a partial evacuation of diplomatic missions or an increased security measures, and the White House has acknowledged the credible threat of an imminent attack on Israel by Iran. So let's go live to Tel Aviv and speak to Uri Geller, who's a mystifier and performer, for the latest on the ground in Israel. Uri, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Look, Nana, things have got incredibly dangerous here in the last few days. You and I normally talk about Gaza, but suddenly there is a much bigger threat. Iran says it is going to attack Israel. It has accused Israel, as you said, of killing several military chiefs in Syria earlier this month, and it says it is going to take revenge. Now, these were no innocent victims. The commander who was killed was behind countless attacks on Israel. Taking him out, if it was Israel, and Israel has not admitted it, that was self-defense. But now Israel is bracing for an Iranian response. There are reports, and I have sources, Nana, that Iran is planning to fire waves of missiles and attack drones at Israel. Now, if this happens, it risks sparking the biggest war the Middle East has ever seen. A direct Iranian attack on Israel has never happened before. And I tell you, Nana, there will be immediate and massive Israeli retaliation. Iran will not know what has hit it. Nana, look, if Iran attacks, Israel will not sit back. Israel has the most powerful army in the whole of the Middle East. Let me show you something. This is unbelievable, mind-blowing. Israel will carry out a blistering attack on Iran. It will devastate its military sites and it will kill its military leaders. We know who these people are and we know where these people are. Now, Iran hides its most important sites underground, but Israel has thousands of bunker-busting bombs. We will take out these hidden sites, including Iran's secret nuclear sites. Yes, we know where every single piece of equipment is, every reactor, every centrifuge, every barrel of uranium. Now, this is mind-blowing. And there is another thing too. Look at this. Israel is believed to possess a weapon called an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. This is a weapon which does not kill people. But when it is detonated above ground, it sends out massive bursts of energy. Everything stops working. No electricity, no power, no light, no heat, no phones, no computers, no radios, no TVs, nothing, nothing. Now, Iran will be paralyzed. It will be sent back to the Stone Age. It will have to rebuild from scratch. Now, finally, Nana, Iran is the head of the snake. Iran controls Hamas. Iran controls Hezbollah. Iran controls the Houthis. And it is openly committed to Israel's destruction. Israel destruction. They want to kill all of us. Iran, don't mess with Israel, or you will pay a very, very heavy price. That's all I have to say. And thanks for having me on again.
Uri, it's really good to talk to you. I'm praying that a lot of the things that you said aren't true or aren't going to happen. I'm praying. But, you know, we watch this war and we see more and more devastation, and it's just terrifying. I wish you safety, and we hope to speak to you again very shortly. Thank you so much. That's Uri Geller with his thoughts and his views on what's happening on the ground and going on in Israel. Well, next up, Philip Davies MP will be in the political hot seat to shine a light on the latest from Westminster in my political spotlight. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for some of us compared to recent weeks, but there is still plenty of showers around, with low pressure situated quite close to the north of the UK. Higher pressure does sit out towards the south and the east, but it's this cold front that's going to bring some cloud and rain to parts of England and Wales through the rest of this evening. It does eventually clear its way south and eastwards overnight and into the start of Sunday, leaving quite a dry picture for most of us into the early hours of Sunday morning. Still some showers around across parts of Scotland, and these could turn heavy in places. But under those clear skies, temperatures dropping off quite nicely. Around 7 or 8 degrees across the south and down to around 2 or 3 across parts of Scotland. We could even see some frost in places. So that does leave a bit of a chillier start to Sunday across parts of Scotland. Those showers quite quickly pushing in from the west though and spreading their way eastwards through the day. Further south, a drier start, but we will see some cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine across southeastern parts of England. It will be a bit of a cooler day than Saturday as well, highs in the south around 14 or 15, and in the north around 9 or 10, but a quite brisk wind here. Through Monday, those showers become much more widespread across the UK, moving through relatively quickly on a brisk northwesterly wind, so it will feel a little cooler than over the weekend. Those showers continue into the start of the next week, and those temperatures a little below average, but recovering closer to average through the end of the week.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? It's all right, you've just missed 46 minutes. You've still got at least 2 hours left, so it's all good. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. And it's time for this week's political spotlight. And joining me to shine a light is Conservative MP for Shipley, Philip Davies. Now, this week, many things happened. Greater Manchester Police reopened an investigation into Angela Rayner's Council House sale. This comes as there are reports that at least 3 cabinet ministers are contemplating voting against Rishi Sunak's flagship smoking ban. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has come under fire for ruining a trainer trend. Oh, dear. So joining me now, Conservative MP for Shipley, Philip Davies. Philip Davies. And I think you're Sir, aren't you? Yeah, you've been knighted, haven't you, Sir Philip? Yet?
Yeah, well, thank you. Now, I don't think we need to bother with all those formalities, knowing each other as well as we do.
Well, Philip, thank you very much for joining me. Now, let's get stuck in and let's start with Angela Rayner. She's currently under investigation, so we just need to obviously stick to the facts. But it's interesting because she did put a lot of pressure on those who supposedly were under investigation to resign. I mean, she did plenty of that to Boris. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, she's been hoisted by her own petard, really, hasn't she? Because, I mean, she's the one who's called for Conservative MPs to publish all of their tax details when it suited her, and now she's not publishing her tax details when it doesn't suit her. As you rightly said, she said that Boris should resign because he was under investigation from the police. Well, she's under investigation from the police, so if she feels so strongly about it, why doesn't she resign? It's the old sort of socialist problem of hypocrisy, really, Nana. That's the problem that Angela Rayner's facing. And look, I don't know the rights and wrongs of what she's done, but you know, the golden rule of politics is usually that it's not the crime that catches you out, it's the cover-up.
Well, she has said that she's done nothing wrong, and you know, and she has said that she will resign if any criminality is found. But she's confident. Interesting that Keir Starmer, who it feels to me like he's doing a Jeremy Corbyn when he was very good friends with Jeremy Corbyn at one point, and then suddenly he wasn't friends with Jeremy Corbyn. It feels like the language of support towards Angela is slightly sort of changing.
Well, Keir Starmer's position is ludicrous, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he said the other day in an interview that he hadn't seen the tax advice that had been given to Angela Rayner, and it wouldn't be appropriate for him to see the tax advice that had been given to him. Well, why would it not be appropriate? I mean, the only conclusion you can draw is that once he's looked at it, he might think that it doesn't add up to much. So he seems to be trying to protect himself from finding out what the reality of the situation is, which, whatever you might think, it's not what you would describe as leadership.
No, wouldn't it be interesting? Because it feels like it's dead certain they're going to be in power. I mean, so we'll see. What about the smoking ban? Is Rishi right to focus on smoking as a serious issue? A lot of people would think, oh, it's a bit of a side issue.
No, this is, I mean, I'm completely opposed to what the government's proposing here. I mean, I hate the nanny state, Nana, and this is the nanny state running riot, to be perfectly honest. Look, this isn't about stopping children from smoking. This is about stopping adults from smoking. And in my opinion, adults should be free to make up their own mind and make their own decision. They don't need the state to make it for them. So I'm completely opposed to what the government's doing here. It's a free vote on Tuesday. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, every vote's a free vote, to be perfectly honest. But it's officially a free vote on Tuesday. Unfortunately, I won't be there because I'll be in my constituency. I've got an engagement in my constituency, so I won't have the pleasure of voting against it at the second reading. But I will very much look forward to voting against it at the third reading when it comes back to Parliament, because I mean, this is the type of thing I absolutely hate, this nanny state approach to politics.
Although he might argue that it's actually could save the government a lot of money because people dying needlessly from smoking, and it costs the NHS hundreds of thousands, if not millions, a year just looking after people who have gone in that direction.
Yeah, well, look, if you want to have a financial calculation about this, I mean, remember, smokers pay a huge amount of tax. billions and billions. I think it's about 8 billion a year in tax. So actually, that's an awful lot of money to try and recover for the exchequer that needs to go into things like the NHS. And I mean, I'm not really a particular fan of looking at it in terms of pounds and pence, but presumably, if people die earlier from smoking, then presumably the government will save a lot on pensions. So I'm not sure the financial argument stacks up.
Well,
I don't think anyone really wants to get into the financial argument. This is about freedom, and it's about people's freedom to choose how to run their own lives and to make their own decisions. And in my opinion, as a Conservative, people should be free to make their own decisions. And I don't think I was sent to Parliament to ban everybody else from doing all the things that I don't happen to like myself.
Okay, that's fair enough. And the Cass report has been major talk at the moment, obviously. It's, the review came out this week. Where do you stand with all of that?
Well, it's a huge report. It's about 400 pages long, but it's and I haven't read it all myself, but the bits I have read, it's well worth a read, Nana. And I mean, you have to say, thank goodness for people like J.K. Rowling and Julie Bindel and people like this who stood up in the face of all sorts of bullying, really, social media bullying. I mean, some terrible bullying from people particularly on the left of politics about all the trans stuff. And now it seems that everybody's now trying to turn turtle and try and pretend that all along they were in favour of biological sex being protected. But it didn't seem like that to me at the time. And those of us who were arguing in favour of protecting the integrity of women's sport and protecting the safety of women and the integrity of women's safe spaces and things like that, we were all castigated at the time.
I remember.
I think I suppose we should be pleased that this is where we appear to have turned the tide on a politically correct hobby horse, and actually the tide has turned in our favour. So I suppose we ought to celebrate that. But I'm afraid people like J.K. Rowling and Julie Bindel and the like went through an awful lot of abuse in order to get here. And but I stand foursquare behind them. They've done people like Sharon Davies done an absolutely fantastic job.
Yeah, thank God.
A lot of absolutely, thank God. And really, the report is an endorsement of the position they've always taken.
And finally, I've got about 20 seconds here, Phil. Rishi Sunak's trainers, he's put people off.
Now, I'm the last person to talk about fashion. I mean, I'm the most unfashionable person in the world. I always thought Rishi looked very, very fashionable, to be honest. I thought he was a fashion icon. I'm certainly not a fashion icon, so the least I say about this, the better, I would say.
Well, listen, Philip, it's such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me, being my political spotlight. Thank you so much. That is Philip Davies, MP for Shipley, joining me. Coming up, my amazing panel, Lizzie Cundy and James Schneider, will be in the studio next, getting the latest from GB News reporter Sophie Reaper, who is live at Aintree for the Grand National. Here's your weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for some of us compared to recent weeks, but there is still plenty of showers around, with low pressure situated quite close to the north of the UK. Higher pressure does sit out towards the south and the east, but it's this cold front that's going to bring some cloud and rain to parts of England and Wales through the rest of this evening. It does eventually clear its way south and eastwards overnight and into the start of Sunday, leaving quite a dry picture for most of us into the early hours of Sunday morning. Still some showers around across parts of Scotland, and these could turn heavy in places. But under those clear skies, temperatures dropping off quite nicely. Around 7 or 8 degrees across the south and down to around 2 or 3 across parts of Scotland. We could even see some frost in places. So that does leave a bit of a chillier start to Sunday across parts of Scotland. Those showers quite quickly pushing in from the west though and spreading their way eastwards through the day. Further south, a drier start, but we will see some cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine across southeastern parts of England. It will be a bit of a cooler day than Saturday as well, highs in the south around 14 or 15, and in the north around 9 or 10, but a quite brisk wind here. Through Monday, those showers become much more widespread across the UK, moving through relatively quickly on a brisk northwesterly wind, so it will feel a little cooler than over the weekend. Those showers continue into the start of the next week, and those temperatures a little below average, but recovering closer to average through the end of the week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You're watching and listening to GB News live on TV, online and on digital radio. We will bring you the latest with Sophie Reaper at Aintree for the Grand National. More of that in the next hour.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for two worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy and also former Labour Party advisor James Schneider. Coming up, 6 people have been killed in a knife attack at a shopping centre in Sydney, Australia. I'll bring you the latest on that. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? For this week's difficult conversation, I'll be joined by lawyer and campaigner Steven Barrett about fostering access to bar and promoting equality of opportunity. You won't want to miss that. Then, for the mini-debate, I'll be joined by an old-age pensioner, says OAP, that's a bit rude, who's been left traumatised, though, after being falsely accused using Scotland's hate crime laws. But before we get started, the Grand National horse racing biggest race of the year is about to get underway. So joining me now from Aintree is GB News North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper, who's been forced outside, apparently. Sophie, you're outside. You look a bit like Beatrice. Beatrice off Eugenie from the royal family with that hat on. You do. So what's going on? Why are you outside?
I'll take it.
I will absolutely take that. That's the best compliment I've had all day, so thank you very much. Well, we're outside Aintree because it is now so chock full of people that we just needed the room, essentially. Now, I can see on my feed here that they are just preparing to start this year's Grand National. Millions of people all over the world will be tuning in to see who this year's champion will be. I can hear noise behind me now, which is suggesting that it very well could be underway. Thousands and thousands of people packed into Aintree today. We know yesterday the total at Ladies' Day was close to 45,000. Potentially 50,000 people here today, whether they're here to see the horses, here to see the fashion. Everyone here today has been having an absolutely phenomenal time, not to mention the fact that the weather thus far has been holding out for us. So earlier on I had a chat with some of the people here at Aintree today, and this is what they had to tell me. What do you think the Grand National means to Liverpool and to the people who come?
I think anyone who comes to Liverpool enjoys it, has a fantastic time, and really gets involved in the hospitality that the Liverpool people give them.
Yourself?
Yeah, just love it. It's just, it makes the city. The city's fabulous anyway. We love it, but yeah, it's just everything. We love it.
Well, it's the atmosphere. It's absolutely fantastic here. You can't beat the atmosphere for racing. The horses are brilliant, the people are brilliant, all times.
A great event for all the family. People come from all over the world, and the people of Liverpool make them welcome, and everybody enjoys it, and we have a great day and hopefully win some money.
It brings a lot of joy, it brings a lot of money to the area, and it's a wonderful experience that most of us from Liverpool have enjoyed since we were children.
Well, I can now confirm that the race is underway. I'm seeing pictures here of that, so it'll be in about 10 minutes. We will know who this year's champion of the Grand National is here at Aintree.
Well, listen, Sophie, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you and find out what's going on then. Hopefully they'll let you back in. Did you actually have a ticket to go in? Come on, tell the truth. I'm joking. Sophie, it's lovely to talk to you. Looking fabulous. And we look forward for an update. That's Sophie Reaper, GB News reporter there. She'll bring us an update on the race when she has them. But now it's time for the news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Good afternoon to you. It's 3 minutes past 4. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The King says he's shocked and horrified by a mass knife attack in a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which killed 6 people. A 40-year-old male suspect was known to police. However, they don't believe his motive was terror-related. The attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the man and shot him dead. A 9-month-old baby is in a critical condition. Its mother was amongst those killed. Police Commissioner Karen Webb says a major investigation is now underway.
Police have secured the crime scene, which you can imagine is expansive inside a very big, busy commercial shopping centre in Sydney. And the crime scene remains ongoing, and it will remain ongoing for a number of days.
Commandos from Iran have landed on a container ship in a helicopter and have seized the vessel off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The vessel involved is thought to have links to Israel, and it comes amid rising tensions in the region, with Iran vowing to retaliate for the attack on its consulate in Syria almost 2 weeks ago. The Islamic Republic holds Israel responsible for that attack and says Israel's presence in the UAE is a threat and has indicated it will close the region's shipping lane if provoked. A new poll has found President Biden has nearly erased Donald Trump's advantage. The poll by the New York Times and Siena College found 45% say they'd vote for the president compared to Mr. Trump's 46%. It means they're now virtually tied, with Joe Biden's standing amongst voters improving. However, age remains a concern, with 69% saying Joe Biden's too old. If elected, though, Mr. Trump, who turned 78 in June, would also be the oldest US president. Greater Manchester Police say they found what they believe to be the human remains of a young baby in Wigan. 5 people have been arrested on suspicion of concealing a death and unlawful burial. The group, aged between 20 and 70 years old, have been bailed. The Chancellor says he's ready to cut taxes and bet on growth after the economy grew by 0.1% in February. The Office for National Statistics also revised January's figure, pushing it up to 0.3%. Well, writing in the Daily Express, Jeremy Hunt says Britain's done the hard yards and the economy is bouncing back. But Labour says most people aren't feeling any of the benefits with low growth and high taxes under the Conservative government. The Chief Executive of NHS England has called out what she says is unacceptable abusive behaviour that doctors and nurses are facing at work. Amanda Pritchard says the health service needs to stamp out abusive behaviour and shouldn't be exempt from its own Me Too movement. Well, according to a major survey, there were 80,000 reports of NHS staff in England being sexually harassed while at work last year. Reports are more prevalent amongst ambulance staff, nursing staff and healthcare assistants. The Royal Navy seized nearly £33 million of drugs from traffickers in the Indian Ocean. Around 3.7 tonnes of substances, which included heroin, crystal meth and cannabis, were taken by crews aboard the HMS Lancaster. The ship was on its first security patrol when its Wildcat helicopter spotted a suspicious boat. Labour claims Britain's roads now have 100 times as many potholes as there are craters on the moon. Figures estimate there were more than 1 million potholes in the UK last year, which can, of course, cause serious damage to cars. The party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says Rishi Sunak is living on another planet after failing to fix the problem. Well, the government says it's investing billions of pounds into improving our roads. Well, you can get more on all of our stories by scanning the QR code on your screen right now for the GB News alerts, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Aaron. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, 6 people have been killed in a knife attack at a shopping centre in Australia. Armed police shot the attacker, preventing worse carnage. The attack is reportedly not terror-related, but I'll bring you more updates as we get them. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? Horse racing is a sport that captivates the attention of millions and keeps them engaged with its unique atmosphere, thrilling races and betting opportunities. But is it a little bit, well, passé? Is it a bit, you know, who wants to watch animals racing? Is it a bit, has it gone too far? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? Then at 4:50 it's Royal Roundup time. Lady Colin Campbell will be live to give us the latest from behind the palace walls. On the menu, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have been spotted smiling and walking hand in hand ahead of Harry's fundraising polo match. And Lady Colin Campbell will also be talking about her brand new book, Harry and Meghan, Persecutors or Victims. I can't wait to get stuck in. And then at 5, it's this week's Difficult Conversation. Lawyer and campaigner Steven Barrett will be live in the studio. He does quite a lot, actually, including volunteering for the Social Mobility Foundation, striving to break down barriers for disadvantaged youth. I'll get all his thoughts at 5. That's coming up in the next hour. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. So, of course, today's big story, 6 people have been killed in a knife attack at a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia. Several others were injured, including a 9-month-old baby, and that is in critical condition right now. The mother is amongst those who have been killed. Authorities say that many more might have died had it not been for the actions of a lone police officer who confronted the attacker and shot him. Police Commissioner Karen Webb said the knife man acted alone and there is no ongoing risk.
Later this evening, we became aware of who we believe the offender is, and we believe that he is a 40-year-old man. However, we are waiting to formally identify him, and we cannot speculate yet on his identification. But let me assure you that we are confident that there is no ongoing risk, and we are dealing with one person who is now deceased.
Well, the knife man was known to police, but the attack is not believed to be terror-related. So joining me now is international security specialist Will Geddes, along with my panel, broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, and also former Labour Party advisor James Schneider. Well, I'm going to start with you. Will Geddes, I mean, look, the Australians, they have a system where their police are armed, and this guy would have done a lot more damage had he not been shot dead by a female officer.
Yes.
Brave woman.
Very brave.
Seeing that, does it make you consider that maybe in this country we need to start thinking about how we arming our own police?
Well, we already do have a very... Well, again, we've got to look at some recent events which I think would put into question whether the universal arming of police officers is such a great idea. Because certainly the specialist firearms officers that were involved in the Chris Cabba case quite recently, for example.
I remember.
And also Tony Long on a previous case to that. You know, they've both been in a situation where they've been pulled through the mill and questioning and inquiries and everything else for a number of years, and it's to a certain extent impacted their personal lives quite horrifically. Now, in terms of us maintaining a standard of many police officers having non-lethal weaponry, like, for example, tasers, and certainly CS gas, those are quite often, if deployed appropriately, if the officers are trained appropriately in how to use them, they can be as effective in many cases, and particularly if it's someone who is only armed with a knife. Now, that doesn't mean that someone with a knife can't cause devastation and a great number of casualties, as we've seen in Sydney this morning. However, the fact is that using non-lethal weapons does also allow you to dig deeper, should you wish, because one of the problems you have is if you kill a terrorist, which I'm all for in many cases, unfortunately, you don't get to understand their network, who else they're talking to, where they've been other than their digital footprint, which is what the police will be doing right now in Australia.
It's horrendous, though, what happened there. So what do we know about the attack in Australia?
Well, we don't know a great deal about the perpetrator, but something which is kind of interesting by the official police statements is the fact that he is known to them. Now, they're not going to confirm his identity quite yet, because obviously they're sifting through certainly probably all his personal possessions, the people he may be living with or, you know, nearby and who he associates with, to try and find out a little bit more about what is his story, you know, what may have driven him to actually perpetrating this horrific attack today. But at the moment, yes, there are 6 fatalities, there are a number of casualties, and it's very, very tragic. And the fact that they have kind of countered the fact that it's a terrorist attack, I think that makes quite a significant point, because many of us will jump immediately to believing it would be terrorism.
Lizzie Cundy, I know you said your son is out there in Sydney, near where the attack...
Yeah, my youngest son is in Sydney, very near where this terrible tragedy happened. Also, my best friend is there and actually works at this shopping mall, but she was running late, or else she would have been caught up in this. So when I heard of this, you can imagine the worry, and I was so relieved to hear from both of them. But my son said that Sydney is in shock, that nothing like this has happened. You don't expect it to happen in Sydney, and he said he just can't believe it. But the first news, when they thought this happened, that it was, you know, the actual shopping mall is run by Jewish. It's a big Jewish community there, and they thought there was some link. But they're saying as of yet, it's not a terror link. But I have to say, we could take a leaf out of their police and the Commissioner, Karen Webb, who instilled such confidence and calm when something like this is going on. And I think the way that they've handled it has been extraordinary. And some of the incredible stories you hear of heroes going out and helping, not, you know, just a guy was in the shop and saw it happening and went and helped and saved that poor baby that's had surgery. But some of the real heroism that's gone on is unbelievable.
I think it's worth mentioning, Nana, that, you know, there's only been 2 terrorist attacks in Australia in the last 4 years. So they really haven't had a great deal of exposure to terrorism. And one of those 2 incidents in the last 2 years, in the last 4 years, and the last one was 2 years ago, was a far-right extremist. But being part of the Five Eyes partners, the Australian Secret Intelligence Service is all over terrorism and counter-terrorism, and certainly they'll be getting their briefings from their other Four Eyes partners.
Well, it's a lot harder to get over to Australia, isn't it? They don't mess around with their border controls either. There's a big old ocean in between. James Schneider, your thoughts?
Like Lizzie was saying, I was quite amazed at reading about the people, the passers-by who intervened to try to help others and to apprehend the attacker. I mean, it sounds like an extremely terrifying experience for everyone who was there. And, you know, of course, 6 people have died and we don't know exactly about the injuries of the others. But it sounds like this could have been much worse if it weren't for the actions of both the police and of people who were, you know, doing their whatever morning it is, Saturday morning shopping.
Do you think that we should look to sort of arming our police more? I know Will said that they are, but that's a specific task force who will come and deal with.
No, I don't think so. I think it's right that you have specialist trained people who are licensed for guns and that they're signed in and signed out, and there's that kind of level of oversight. I think that we're lucky here in the UK that we don't have very many guns in our society, full stop. And I think the fact that we don't also means that the police don't have to. And I find it it's actually a very positive sign about our country that the police have basically non-lethal force as the first port of call. So I would like to see that stay for as long as possible, really. Of course, specialist ones, counter-terrorism, etc., they, of course, need to be armed, but your everyday bobby, you don't want that to be their first port of call.
Well, I agree with everything that Will said. I mean, because Taser, if the police are trained in the right way and we get the best quality police, you then can have, who's done this and then have them to answer the questions. And I think if you can Taser and not kill is far better in my eyes.
Terrified if our police force had guns. God help us.
Well,
I don't mean to say it, but, of the things that go on, and I'm so sad to see our police force in such a terrible state.
Yeah.
But I'd be frightened if a lot of the officers who are in the force were allowed to carry guns.
It is a worry. I think we've got to look at how our police are and how capable they are and getting the right quality to be police.
I mean, I think we've seen enough examples, sadly, on social media, and I do have a lot of good friends in the police, so I'm a strong advocate and supporter of them. But we've sadly seen some examples of some very poor policing, as Lizzie says, and even the deployment of tasers or even the inappropriate deployment of CS gas. You start putting a loaded gun in someone's possession or their access.
Frightening.
And having worked around firearms for much of my adult life, I know how volatile they are and how responsible the person who's holding it needs to be.
Yeah, that's a good point. The Australians are really, handling this well, I say.
Yeah, really well.
Watching the way their police force operate. And that's not to put down our police officers, because there are plenty of incredible police officers. There's a handful of them, a very large handful, by the way, or 2 or 3 handfuls of very bad officers. I mean, actually, a bucket load. I don't mean to be rude, but, from what we've heard. But no, there are some also...
Well, there's something that's really become very apparent, certainly in the last few years, is that the police have to be very quick at releasing information.
Yeah.
With, Twitter, or X as it's now known, and other social media, you'll have all the conspiracy theorists, you'll have all the speculators, the armchair critics and analysts who will come up with all sorts of ideas. The problem is that can be massively misleading. It can also inject fear where there doesn't need to be. It can expand and certainly exaggerate on what's actually happened. So the police forces worldwide all know, and every police force will be watching the Australian police and how they're responding to this, to say what lessons can we learn to make sure we get information out as quickly as we possibly can, even if we're still in a void of not knowing exactly what has happened.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm sick and tired of hearing that phrase, lessons will be learned. But the other one I'm getting sick and tired of is now hearing police force reporting themselves, putting themselves into special measures. I mean, I don't know which one was the latest one that's recently done that. Was it Northampton or Nottinghamshire police doing that? And, they mess it up and then they say, well, would we put ourselves into special measures? I mean, I don't know. Well, it's not... I don't want to... I shouldn't laugh.
But no, I'm worried about our police. Look, I had a very well-publicised burglary at my home, and I just wanted to inquire about it. It took, 2 weeks for someone to get back to me, but then when they did, they got the wrong notes.
Well, at least you're not in Scotland, because it would take them years, because they're under the pile of a load of non-crime hate incidents.
Yeah, exactly.
All the lodges against... J.K. Rowling, wasn't it?
Well, that's it. Exactly. And this poor lady, Morag, she's been arrested by the police, 74-year-old, for a non-crime hate incident. She didn't know it was... it wasn't even her, by the way.
Beggars belief.
It was a false, mistaken identity.
No, it was just that I think the language or the foul language or whatever was coming from near her house, but it wasn't actually from her house. Somebody overheard.
Even better.
They apparently overheard it. I mean, goodness, what they thought of at the game, the Celtic Rangers game, with the language that would have been there last Sunday, let me tell you.
Well, listen, we will talk about that as well, and hopefully, if we can get more ag, we'll try and get more ag towards the end of the show. If you just joined us, welcome. It's 21 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, Royal Roundup with Lady Colin Campbell with the latest from behind the palace walls. We'll get her rundown on her brand new book as well, Meghan and Harry, Persecutors or Victims. What do you think? Now, I Am Maximus has won this year's Grand National, by the way. That is the result. Sorry to get you straight in there, but it has, if you wanted to hide your eyes or hide your ears or whatever. But unfortunately, yes, I Am Maximus, so if you put a bet on there, then good for you. So next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking you, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Get in touch, go online, gbnews@gbnews.com, or tweet me at GBNews. That's on the way next.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Is it OK to call people fat? I won't call Bev fat because she isn't. She won't call me fat because I'm not. But the fitness fanatic, Derek Evans, you might know him better as 90s icon Mr Motivator, recently told a podcast diabetes have gone through the roof. You should be able to call people fat.
Well, he joins us now. Good morning, Derek. Good morning.
Good morning.
Great to see you. So I think what you're getting at is this idea that we've become so polite about weight that we're ignoring the elephant in the room. If you'll forgive the phraseology there, and actually sometimes you've got to be cruel to be kind.
Well, actually, this has been taken out of all context. I actually didn't say you're entitled to call people fat. What I did say is that in the 80s and 90s, I remember the way I got into television, there was a gentleman walking at reception while I was waiting for the people I was training. And for some reason, I got up and I prodded him in the belly. And I said to him, you need to deal with that. That was fat. We have a nation where obesity, diabetes is killing every one of us. And unless we take responsibility for our health, rather than waiting for government to do this, government to do that, it is our responsibility, right, to look after our independence and our health. And as we get older, it's even more critical, right? And that's why I'm here as an example saying to you, listen, I'm 71 years of age and movement is medicine. And you can't sit around watching television and not going out to the gym or wherever. You will never, ever be able to look after your family and everything you've worked for. You will lose it. I've never seen a deposit account behind a hearse. No matter what you work for, the most important thing you can do with your life is every hour, do something active. Every hour.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 25 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? The Grand National, a celebrated event in horse racing, faces mounting scrutiny over its ethical and practical dimensions. And whilst the sport lies in its rich history, captivating atmosphere and this lucrative betting opportunities that are available, there are a lot of concerns over animal welfare and also the ethical implications of gambling, which cast a shadow over the future of this annual event. Now, the stark reality of horse racing and the toll it has on its participants, there's lots of studies that revealed alarming injury and fatality rates among competing horses, which has prompted a necessary re-evaluation of the sport's practices. I mean, only yesterday, 2 horses died during Ladies' Day at the festival as animal charities called for an end to the event. So what do you think? It's coming to a close this weekend, but what are your thoughts? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? Well, joining me now to discuss, Benedict Spence, political commentator, Brendan Powell, Grand National winning jockey of 1988, and Dean Stansell, horse racing consultant, Animal Aid, from Animal Aid. Right, I'm going to start with you. Brendan Powell, you're a Grand National winning jockey, 1988. What do you think about the Grand National? Is it a bit, you know, do we need to move on from it now?
I don't think so, Nana. I've just watched a race there. I saw 2 fallers at the chair. Both got up and galloped off. Carroch Rambler, who won it last year, unseated at the first, so didn't actually fall. And I think for the first time ever, I've never seen so many horses there with a chance turning into the straight. It looked a great race. It went a sensible pace. A lot of horses finished out the race very well. So, yeah, I just thought it looked a great race, and the best horse on the day won it.
But what about the welfare for the horses? Do they? I mean, did your horse appear to enjoy what it was doing, and how would you know if it did?
Well, if he didn't enjoy it, they wouldn't want to do it. I mean, you can't force an animal to do anything. And yeah, the time before he won the National, he fell in the Gold Cup at the 3rd last. He popped around Aintree. He actually got an injury in the race, which we could have. Yeah, he cracked a small bone in his hock. We could have brought him back again, but because he won the National, the owners decided to retire him, and he retired and had a great retirement back at the owner's place. But no, look, it's, as I said, things have changed over the years. Fences got a lot smaller. I mean, watching it today, I mean, most of the fences are, especially Beechers, Valentines, the chair, all the what I call dangerous parts of them, taken out, the drops at Beechers and the whole lot. And watching all the horses go around there today, they all seem to jump very well. And I think it was the same yesterday in the Topham Trophy, or the Topham. There were so many horses got round. There was no fallers. So yeah, we're doing everything we can to keep it as safe as possible.
Dean Stansell, what are your thoughts on this? Because I don't think I hear what Brendan is saying, but I don't know if the horse feels it has to do what you want it to do. Otherwise, don't they have like a whip and then they have something here in their mouth and that the bit and all that? Surely this isn't nice for the horses.
Exactly, Nana. You've got it spot on there. You know, we saw horses being whipped today. The bits in the mouths are very severe on some of the horses, and the only way you can control these half-ton, 500 kg horses is with the bit in the mouth, and they drag them around and pull them around with these, and we don't actually see the damage that actually goes on behind the scenes. You know, Brendan gave a very sanitised version of the race, a very good commentary on what happened today, but what he didn't go into is the fact that horses die every week on British racecourses, so we can't just sort of say today's Grand National was safe when horses are getting killed nearly every day on racecourses. Around 150 jump horses a year get killed on racecourses across Britain, and I think the Grand National epitomises all that is wrong with racing, you know, because it's historically been so dangerous and has killed so many horses in the past.
Yeah, I kind of feel sorry for them in a way, but I hear that if they didn't want to do it, they wouldn't do it, but I don't think they've got a choice. They have to do it, don't they, Benedict?
I mean, yeah, I think we have to take several things into account. I'm not a fan of horse racing. It's just never been my sport in particular. I don't see the appeal of it, but a lot of people do. I think we need to recognize that horses have been specifically bred for this purpose over centuries, actually, and so that there is a degree of, you know, the horses that are the most successful at it being the ones that, perhaps it's wrong to say enjoy it, but are best at it and understand what is required of them, and therefore have a bit more of a natural instinct. But what I'd say is ultimately, this is different to other sort of animal-based, you know, blood sports, things like like bullfighting or fox hunting or things like that, in that actually this carries sort of widespread, massive appeal to a lot of very wealthy individuals across the world. This isn't actually just, sort of a casual pastime. Huge amounts of money are invested in this sport by, sheikhs and American billionaires and everybody you could possibly think about. It is a sport that is enjoyed from the Americas to the Gulf to China. There is a lot of vested interests, therefore, in keeping the sport going. And I think maybe, therefore, if it is going to have to sort of require more safetyism involved, you might see a little bit more of that. But is it on the way out? Even if it loses appeal amongst the average member of the British public, as an international spectacle, no, this is one of the high points, I think, of the international racing calendar, and there's far too much money tied up in it and far too much interest tied up in it for it to die a death, I think. So even if the average punter doesn't perhaps feel as interested as they used to, I think simply because of the scale of it on the international stage, I think its future is more than secure.
All right, listen, well, thank you for that. So I'll ask you, each of you, so is it time for the Grand National to just pack up and go away? Benedict Spence?
No, it isn't.
Brendan Powell? Yes?
Definitely not.
And Dean Stansel, what do you think? What's your thought?
Yeah, we've certainly got to get rid of it. I mean, I respect both the views of Brendan and Benedict, but the fact is we're seeing a decline in people going to racecourses. We're seeing the racing industry having to come out with a new PR campaign this week called PWR. We would say that's poor welfare record, but the racing industry might say differently. What we're seeing is the lower end of racing is collapsing because there's not enough money there for the horses. We're seeing horses going for slaughter. Yeah, sure, the top end's buoyant, but the bottom end that really underpins racing is very, very fragile and vulnerable.
Well,
that is where it will crumble.
That's where it will crumble.
Opinion as a whole is turning against.
You think? I think a lot of people will love it. I mean, I personally, I don't particularly have an opinion either way, but I don't like seeing animals being upset. But if they're having a good time, who knows? Benedict Spence, thank you so much for your thoughts. Brendan Powell and also Dean Stansel, thank you. This is GB News. What are your views? 32 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. But first, let's get your latest news.
Hi there, very good afternoon to you. It is 16:32. I'm Aaron Armstrong. The King says he's shocked and horrified by a mass knife attack at a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which killed 6 people. If you're watching on TV, you can see the moment the assailant was confronted by a very brave man holding a metal bollard. Now, that 40-year-old male suspect was known to police. They don't believe his motive was terror-related. A 9-month-old baby remains in critical condition. Its mother was amongst those killed. The attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the man and shot him dead. Iranian special forces have seized a container ship with 25 crew members off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The vessel involved is believed to have links to Israel and comes amid rising tensions in the region and threats from Iran. The Islamic Republic has called Israel's presence in the UAE a threat and has warned it will close the region's shipping lane if provoked. A new poll has found President Biden has almost erased Donald Trump's advantage. The poll by the New York Times and Siena College found 45% say they'd vote for the president compared to 46% who'd vote for Mr. Trump. It means they're virtually tied now, with Joe Biden standing amongst voters improving. However, despite a strong economy, almost 80% rated economic conditions as just fair or poor. And officials in Turkey have ordered the detention of 13 people after yesterday's deadly cable car collision. 1 person was killed and 10 others injured when the cable car collided with a broken pole, ripping the pod open and sending people inside plummeting to the rocks below. 174 passengers have been rescued. It's a massive operation, taking some 23 hours, involving 10 helicopters and more than 600 rescue workers. And finally, I Am Maximus has won the Grand National at Aintree. The 7-1 joint favourite romped home by several lengths to win for jockey Paul Townsend and trainer Willie Mullins. The prize, more than £500,000. New safety measures, though, meant 6 fewer horses took part this year due to the death of 4 horses last year. Well, you can sign up to GB News alerts for more. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website for more details. Now it's back to Nana.
"35 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, my royal roundup. Royal biographer Lady Colin Campbell will give us the latest from behind the palace walls, and we'll talk about her brand new book as well. I can't wait to read it. Meghan and Harry, persecutors or victims? But next, it's the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? I've got a poll up right now on X asking you that very question. Has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? Get in touch. gbnews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. Cast your vote now.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
It's the first time we've had an admission from someone who, at least used to be very senior in the party, saying that this election is not about winning, really, for the Conservatives now. It's about mitigating the losses.
There is broad recognition that this election has already been lost and that it's about damage limitation. And it is really important because it's the difference between whether, if Labour win a slim majority, then the fight is on for the next election. I know it seems silly to look 5 years ahead, but it does make a difference, versus basically accepting that we have 10 years of Labour government ahead.
Having an acknowledgement that the Tories are going to lose and lose badly, disastrously maybe, having that acknowledgement coming from somebody so senior is very demoralising for everybody else in the party, but also doesn't it make it then look rather immoral for them to just drag on right through to maybe November?
Personally, I think Rishi Sunak should name the date now. I think he should name it for October or November.
In terms of reform, if they're only 4 points behind the Conservatives in the latest poll, do we need to stop the narrative, which we have been using legitimately, saying, well, they're doing all right in the polls, but they won't win any seats? Do we need to change that perspective now?
I think it's really difficult to say. It depends on Reform's electoral strategy. There's a lot of evidence that in certain parts of the country with certain demographics, they do have a really good chance. So I think if they target seats in the Red Wall and other places where there's big disillusionment with the Conservatives and what they'd promised, I can't imagine that Reform are at the stage where they could take masses of seats. It's more about that portion of the vote that they'll be taking away that I think is going to result in that massive Labour landslide.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country.
That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel. Welcome back. If you've just tuned in, welcome on board. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date? While the famous racing event boasts of rich history and draws fans with its wonderful atmosphere and all the other stuff that goes on, the betting and all the other things, there are concerns over the animal welfare and the ethics of gambling. Recent tragedies include 2 horse deaths during Ladies' Day at the festival, which underscore the urgent need for scrutiny and potential reform in horse racing. In theory, it's a sport which is potentially out of its depth. What do you think? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, has the Grand National gone past its sell-by date. Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, who's a former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. Well, I'm going to start with you, James Schneider.
I know very little about horse racing, I have to admit. But Liverpool is my favourite city in Britain, and if the good people of Liverpool like the Grand National at Aintree, then I think that should carry on. I'm sure there are things about animal welfare that can be improved, and there are issues with gambling, although my intuition is that the issues with gambling are much less about these kind of day-out events and are much more to do with the kind of slot machine things which get you locked in. So it seems from what we've seen, as I say, I'm not an expert, I don't know that much about horse racing, that people are having a good time, and long may that continue.
Well, what about the poor horses, though?
So if there are
How
things...
would you like with a bit in your mouth and a whip? Actually, don't answer that. Lizzie Cundy.
This is another show. It's another show. Look, I know a lot about horse racing. I'm a huge fan. My sister used to go out with the jockey John Frankham, and they look after these horses from morning, noon, and night. It's their whole life. They are so like they're part of the family. Yes, there needs to be improvement. There needs to be better safety issues, improving the designs of the first fence so it's nearer the starting line, getting softer rubber foam sort of toe boards.
What are the toe boards for?
Well, so it's softer on the horse's feet, and also if you have the pop-up irrigation for the water, so that it's not so dry, because that's when they get
the land a little bit softer.
And look, today's race, what a success! I am Maximus 1, not good for me because I had £500 on Limerick Lace.
You got £500 on
yes,
something?
I was going to buy you dinner.
Don't ever do that at home.
I'm sorry, yes, don't do that.
Don't bet on anything that you can't afford to lose.
There's no apparent injuries today's race.
Apart from the 2 deaths.
Well, but sadly, look, in all sports, there are incidents. Look at Formula 1, look at boxing, look at rugby. They just need to be mindful and make this safer for the horses and the jockeys.
But it's so archaic, though, isn't it? Just like, you know, watching animals running. I mean, it's like the sort of thing you did at school with the snail race. Why are we doing this? Haven't we moved on from this?
Well, some people might have done, you might have done, you don't watch it. I
know I'd probably put a bet on. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm just thinking that, is it a bit out of date? Are we a bit, you know, why are we doing this? It's like gladiator time.
It's absolutely great fun. I mean, the first race was in 1839. It first got televised in 1960. It goes out to 140 other countries, and just today, I mean, on bets, it was 650 million, can you believe? So there's a lot of interest in this.
Money,
and 70,000 went to watch live. It's great fun, and if you love the horses, love putting a bet on, it's actually very, very exciting. And they just need to be more mindful of the health and safety of the horses, and I've said a few things they can easily do to make that happen.
Imagine how enthusiastic Lizzie would be if her horse came in the top 3 rather than a sad 10th. This is the enthusiasm at 10th.
I would be running around the studio, I really would. But it brings a lot of joy, Nana. And as I said, there's risks in all sorts of sports.
I don't know. Listen, I don't really have an opinion either way. If I go to the horses, I always put a small bet on. I'm not encouraging people to bet, though, by the way. And if you ever do put a bet on, make sure that it's an amount that you're prepared to lose. But this show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's go to... Where should we go? Let's go
Bristol.
where there are some animals in the zoo. We'll go to Bristol, to Lee Harris. He's one of them. I'm joking, Lee, you know that. Lee, are you well?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. Lee, what do you think? Is this a bit old-fashioned? It sort of reminds me of the Gladiator and all that sort of thing. You know, where spectators watching a spectacle, which is probably quite cruel on some levels.
I hear where you're coming from. I mean, I'm not like massively into the horse racing, but I do like it. But I don't think it's past its sell-by date. And I think, you know, we can categorically confirm that by the 80,000 turnout this weekend. And I was genuinely staggered to read that they're expecting 600 million people to tune in this afternoon, or tuned in this afternoon when it happened. So it is extremely popular with the public here and around the world. It's part of our national identity. It's part of our history and culture. It's the most iconic steeplechase in the world. It's great for the economy, and the day out of the races is utterly brilliant. Now, I've never been to the Grand National, but I've been to Newmarket races in the past, and it was a great excuse to dress up, drink some Pims, and put a few bets on. I absolutely loved it. But I am with you on, I do hate it that quite often horses do die at this particular event. As you've already said, 3 horses died at last year's race, 4 died the year before, and sadly 2 on Ladies' Day this weekend. A total of 65 horses have now died at Aintree since the year 2000. I genuinely do find that heartbreaking, but we just need to continue focusing on improving the safety of the horses. So, as Lizzie said, I'm really pleased to see they made changes to improve the safety, like reducing the number of horses running, lowering the jumps, standing starts, and so on. But, I think they do need to do more. But I'm really pleased to hear that all the horses finished safely today. No one fell. So these changes are clearly having effect. So on balance, I definitely don't want it to be cancelled. I get the complaints from animal rights protests. I kind of see it, but it definitely shouldn't be banned.
It shouldn't be banned. Lee Harris, thank you so much. He's there in Bristol. He's our great British voice. Thank you so much, Lee. Always a pleasure. Still to come, my difficult conversation. Lawyer and campaigner Steven Barrett will be here live to give us his aims and what he plans to do to break down barriers for disadvantaged youth. But next, Lady Colin Campbell will be here to give us the latest from behind the palace, but also in my Royal Roundup.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for some of us compared to recent weeks, but there is still plenty of showers around, with low pressure situated quite close to the north of the UK. Higher pressure does sit out towards the south and the east, but it's this cold front that's going to bring some cloud and rain to parts of England and Wales through the rest of this evening. It does eventually clear its way south and eastwards overnight and into the start of Sunday, leaving quite a dry picture for most of us into the early hours of Sunday morning. Still some showers around across parts of Scotland, and these could turn heavy in places. But under those clear skies, temperatures dropping off quite nicely. Around 7 or 8 degrees across the south and down to around 2 or 3 across parts of Scotland. We could even see some frost in places. So that does leave a bit of a chillier start to Sunday across parts of Scotland. Those showers quite quickly pushing in from the west though and spreading their way eastwards through the day. Further south, a drier start, but we will see some cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine across southeastern parts of England. It will be a bit of a cooler day than Saturday as well, highs in the south around 14 or 15, and in the north around 9 or 10, but a quite brisk wind here. Through Monday, those showers become much more widespread across the UK, moving through relatively quickly on a brisk northwesterly wind, so it will feel a little cooler than over the weekend. Those showers continue into the start of the next week, and those temperatures a little below average, but recovering closer to average through the end of the week.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's election channel. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Sorry. Danny says the horses in the National are some of the best treated animals in the world. They probably wouldn't even be alive if it wasn't for horse racing. Rich said, of course we should keep the Grand National. It's an historic event. People love it. Everyone knows what they're getting into. And then Just says, riding and repeatedly whipping an animal for entertainment seems a little archaic. I'm with you on that. I'm with you on that. But listen, there's always something going on in the royal household, and this week has been no different. And each Saturday I love to give you a rundown. Who better to do so than royal biographer Lady Colin Campbell, who's just released her brand new book, Meghan and Harry, The Real Story. Persecutors or victims? Well, joining me now is Lady Colin Campbell. Lady Colin Campbell, Lady C, lovely to see you, and congratulations on your new book. So what can you tell us about it?
Thank you. Well, yes, I thought it's about time that somebody nailed those two to the post, you know, and just sort of went through everything with a fine-tooth comb and just absolutely nailed everything that they've done, because it's been so irresponsible, and quite frankly, it's been a total disgrace and a disaster in terms of the Commonwealth. Although I think the situation is reversing now that they are being exposed and have also exposed themselves, because as we all are all aware, they have tanked in popularity on both sides of the Atlantic. And no matter how many designer garments she puts on, a pig is a pig with or without lipstick.
What did you say? Sorry, what was that? What was that last thing you said?
A pig is a pig with or without lipstick.
Oh, Lady Colin. Well, apologies if anyone's offended by that. Lady Colin Campbell, you naughty lady. But yes, sorry to anybody who was upset by Lady Colin Campbell's description. But she's not the only one that said that. Didn't Barack Obama say it about someone as well? I think he said it about, what's the name? Anyway, so you've got this fabulous book. Give me some of the highlights. What can we expect to see in it or read in it?
Well, I think it pretty much covers everything, you know, because my original book was originally conceived as a shot across the bow so that Meghan and Harry, well, Meghan would stop trying to politicise and commercialise being a member of the royal family. Then, of course, they Mexited a month before my book was due to be handed in, so I had to update it and redo it, which was quite a big thing. That's the original book. And so much has happened in the last 4 years, where they have really exposed themselves and shown themselves to be extremely commercially orientated and very irresponsible. And really, as far as I can see, two of the biggest race baiters that are in existence at the moment. And, you know, being Jamaican, I've had a lot of complaints from diplomats in the West Indies and in Africa about the tremendous damage that they were doing to the Commonwealth. And remember, the Queen, the late Queen, had made them president and vice president of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, so that Meghan's unique attributes as a woman of colour would have actually enhanced the interests of the Commonwealth. Instead of which, the Queen went to her death thinking that the world believed that the royal family were racist. I mean, and you know, throughout the Commonwealth, there has been a tremendous amount of despair because of the untrue accusations that they made about the members of the royal family. And also, in a lot of the Commonwealth countries, people also felt that it was pretty unfair for them to be tarnishing all the British people with a racist brush, when nowadays Britain is one of the most racially inclusive and welcoming societies on earth.
Or perhaps that I think Meghan didn't really understand that, though, because she took on the stuff that happens in America and probably projected it onto this country. Lady Colin Campbell, listen, we're running out of time, but the book, which is a must-read, it's Meghan and Harry, The Real Story, Persecutors or Victims. Lady C, thank you so much for joining me. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua, still to come. Lovely to talk to you. Steven Barrett will be my difficult conversation in a matter of moments. He'll be live telling us about his role at a legal engagement and social mobility, championing initiatives aimed at empowering young people. First, though, let's get an update with your weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for some of us compared to recent weeks, but there is still plenty of showers around, with low pressure situated quite close to the north of the UK. Higher pressure does sit out towards the south and the east, but it's this cold front that's going to bring some cloud and rain to parts of England and Wales through the rest of this evening. It does eventually clear its way south and eastwards overnight and into the start of Sunday, leaving quite a dry picture for most of us into the early hours of Sunday morning. Still some showers around across parts of Scotland, and these could turn heavy in places. But under those clear skies, temperatures dropping off quite nicely. Around 7 or 8 degrees across the south and down to around 2 or 3 across parts of Scotland. We could even see some frost in places. So that does leave a bit of a chillier start to Sunday across parts of Scotland. Those showers quite quickly pushing in from the west, though, and spreading their way eastwards through the day. Further south, a drier start, but we will see some cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine across southeastern parts of England. It will be a bit of a cooler day than Saturday as well. Highs in the south around 14 or 15, and in the north around 9 or 10, but a quite brisk wind here. Through Monday, those showers become much more widespread across the UK, moving through relatively quickly on a brisk northwesterly wind, so it will feel a little cooler than over the weekend. Those showers continue into the start of the next week, and those temperatures a little below average, but recovering closer to average through the end of the week.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Variety Cruises have been sailing since 1942, and thanks to them, you could set sail in 2025. You have the chance to win a 7-night small boat cruise for 2 worth £10,000. With your flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, you can choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures and find your home at sea. You'll also win an incredible £10,000 in tax-free cash that you can use to make this summer spectacular. We'll also treat you to these luxury travel gifts. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. Coming up, this week's difficult conversation, I'll be joined by broadcaster and lawyer Steven Barrett to discuss his charity work aiming to empower young individuals and promote equality of opportunity. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban? Then my quickfire quiz. I test my panel on some of the big stories that caught their eye this week. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Very good afternoon to you. It is 5 o'clock. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. The King says he's shocked and horrified by a mass knife attack in a shopping centre near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which killed 6 people. If you're watching on TV, you can see the moment the assailant was confronted by a brave man holding a bollard. And that 40-year-old male suspect was known to police. They don't believe his motive was terror-related. A 9-month-old baby is in a critical condition. The child's mother pleaded with others for help after she also suffered stab wounds, and she has died in hospital. The attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the man and shot him dead. The Australian Prime Minister has praised her bravery and all emergency responders who attended the scene.
Today, Bondi Junction was the scene of shocking violence, but it was also witness to the humanity and the heroism of our fellow Australians. Our brave police, our first responders, and of course everyday people who could never have imagined that they would face such a moment. And some of the footage is quite extraordinary.
Iranian special forces have seized a container ship and 25 crew members off the coast of the United Arab Emirates. The vessel, which has links to Israel, was passing through the Strait of Hormuz. It comes amid rising tensions in the region, with the US warning yesterday an Iranian attack on Israel was likely to happen sooner rather than later. Well, Iran has vowed to retaliate for an airstrike on its consulate in Syria almost 2 weeks ago, which killed a number of senior officers. Israel says Iran will bear the consequences for an escalation of hostilities. A new poll has found President Biden is closing the gap on Donald Trump's advantage in the race to be president. The poll by the New York Times and Siena College found 45% say they'd vote for Joe Biden compared to 46% who'd vote for Donald Trump. It means they're now virtually tied, with Biden standing amongst Democratic voters improving. However, age remains a concern, with 69% saying Joe Biden's too old. If elected, though, Mr. Trump, who turned 78 in June, would also be the oldest US president. Greater Manchester Police say they have found what they believe to be human remains of a young baby in Wigan. 5 people have been arrested on suspicion of concealing a death and unlawful burial. The group, aged between 20 and 70 years of age, have been bailed. Officials in Turkey have ordered the detention of 13 people after yesterday's deadly cable car collision. 1 person was killed and 10 others were injured when the cable car collided with a broken pole, ripping the pod open and sending people inside plummeting to the rocks below. 174 passengers were rescued during a massive 23-hour operation, which involved 10 helicopters and more than 600 rescue workers. The Chancellor says he's ready to cut taxes and bet on growth after the economy grew by 0.1% in February. The Office for National Statistics also revised January's figure, pushing it up to 0.3%. Writing in the Daily Express, Jeremy Hunt says Britain has done the hard years and the economy is bouncing back. But Labour says most people are not feeling the benefits with low growth and higher taxes under the Conservative government. The Chief Executive of NHS England has called out what she says is unacceptable abuse and behaviour that doctors and nurses have to face at work. Amanda Pritchard says the health service needs to stamp out abusive behaviour and it shouldn't be exempt from its own Me Too movement. According to a major survey, there were 80,000 reports of NHS staff in England being sexually harassed while at work last year. Reports are more prevalent amongst ambulance staff, nurses and healthcare assistants. Labour claims Britain's roads now have 100 times as many potholes as there are craters on the moon. Figures estimate there were more than 1 million potholes in the UK last year, which can cause serious damage to cars. The party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, says Rishi Sunak is living on another planet after failing to fix the problem. The government says it's investing billions of pounds into improving our roads. And Ian Maximus has won the Grand National at Aintree. The 7-1 joint favourite romped home by several lengths to win for jockey Paul Townsend and trainer Willie Mullins. The prize, more than £500,000. It capped an Irish 1, 2, 3 and 4 in the race. However, new safety measures meant 6 fewer horses took part due to the death of 4 horses last year. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Nana.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 6 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today is broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. Still to come, my difficult conversation today is with lawyer Steven Barrett, who will be here live to tell me about his mission to foster diversity and inclusion in both his personal and professional life. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban? Then my mini-debate, stay tuned for that. We'll be discussing the new Scottish hate laws and why a pensioner was carted off by the cops into a police van. As ever, get in touch by visiting the website gbnews.com/your say. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. So it's time for this week's difficult conversation, and today I'm joined by barrister, writer and campaigner Steven Barrett. He's a distinguished legal professional whose expertise spans various aspects of commercial and financial services law. He holds a degree from Oxford, so he's very clever. And having lectured at Cambridge, even more clever, Steven brings a wealth of knowledge to the table. Beyond his impressive legal career, Steven is deeply committed to promoting access to the bar and advancing equality of opportunity. He actively engages with diverse groups, delivering talks, offering support to aspiring legal minds. He's as chair of the Big Voice London, a legal engagement and social mobility charity. He champions initiatives aimed at empowering young individuals from non-fee-paying schools across England and Wales. I'm very pleased to say that lawyer and campaigner Steven Barrett joins me now. Steven, welcome.
Not at all. It's an absolute pleasure, and it's a bit of a change from how I normally sort of appear on television. But this is the part of my life that is deeply important to me. I find it incredibly fulfilling, and it's the one bit of politics I will do. And I was teasing one of your lovely producers because he was suggesting that this was the time when I wouldn't be political. When actually all my other television appearances, no matter how much they might upset anybody, are just law. This is the first time I'm going to do politics in public.
That's interesting. Aren't we lucky? Thank you very much for doing it with me.
And I'm hoping it won't be controversial, but it will still be politics.
Well, can I ask you then, because you've had quite an illustrious career in commercial and also financial services law, and you have quite a strong focus on banking and partnerships and stuff like that. Can you share some insights into some of the most challenging cases that you've handled on these areas?
Yes. So one of the proudest moments what I've probably had, which is just going to consign me to history as an utter nerd, but in financial services law, we have something called the perimeter. Everything inside the perimeter is regulated. Everything outside the perimeter is not regulated. So the perimeter is quite important. And on a secondment to the FCA, I got to extend the perimeter. I personally got to draft and change the perimeter. And that's quite, in financial services, it's a big thing. I do now entirely High Court work. I've been involved in suing or potentially suing political parties. I've acted for some of the wealthiest peoples in the world. I acted for a family, and they were so wealthy that I and the solicitors, we had a code name to talk about the client whenever we spoke. So even though we were on their side, we had to use a code name to talk about the client, which is the sort of, that's the type of clients I'm working for, and I do an awful lot of failed financial services investment cases, failed tax schemes, minority shareholders and protecting their rights, anything really that comes up. The new development for me, which is so new, I mean, new in that I've been doing it for 3 years, but it's still new and it's not on the website, is that I've started doing public law because I've decided public law is too important for public lawyers.
What does that mean?
Well, it's the type of things like equality law and challenging government and doing judicial review of certain bodies, because as I think what is broadly called the culture war expands, and as you get something like the debanking scandal. Now, the debanking scandal involves a little bit of public law, but it also involves an awful lot of financial services and regulatory law. Now, I can tell you, and it's non-controversial, I doubt another lawyer would honestly disagree, that the type of law lawyers are scared of is financial services law, and actually equalities law and public law, it's not easy, it's proper hard law, but it's probably easier for a financial services lawyer to add on that than it is for a public lawyer to learn financial services law. And so that's what I've been doing. I'm sort of moving into that because it seems to happen more and more, and it seems to be an area that seems to be going on. So it's one of the things I wanted to be in charge of it. I decided early on that I wanted to be in the High Court, and I will do quite a variety of topics on law. I am, if you think about it, a criminal lawyer practices in one module that they did in university. And I will practice in 5 or 6 modules that I did in university, and then probably another 5 or 6 that I've had to teach myself after university.
It's fascinating, isn't it? The debanking situation is fascinating.
It is.
Where are banks? Where do they stand? Are they allowed to do that?
No, I don't think they are.
Oh, wow.
To put it in a fine sense.
Yeah.
I think that the banks have perhaps got themselves a bit out of kilter, and we've just got something called the consumer duty, which has come in financial services law. It's yet to be litigated. And these are the things I like.
Fascinating.
The bits of law that aren't settled yet.
I mean, didn't Nigel Farage do well bringing that to the forefront? Because there's many people who've been debanked. I didn't even know. I'd never even heard about being debanked. But hearing from Nigel and then hearing from all these normal people like you and I, everyday people, having their accounts just withdrawn because the bank decided they don't like the cut of your jib. I mean, that's just not on, is it?
It's a major issue. It will play out throughout the courts.
Interesting, isn't it? Fascinating. Fascinating. Now, you're not just a lawyer or a barrister. What's the difference between a barrister and a lawyer?
So the word lawyer is not regulated, so anybody can call themselves a lawyer. And I told my own MP, and I tend to tell members of Parliament and members of the House of Lords, in my view, I think they're all lawyers. I mean, they're dealing with law every day, so why not call yourself a lawyer? Scholars of the law, academic lawyers, I think they're all entitled to the word lawyer. What we do, and the way we define it, is we don't regulate that word. So there's no criminal or civil penalty around calling yourself a lawyer. If you want to call yourself a lawyer, you could. Yeah, you could. I mean, but you, as law, you would be free to. The regulated terms are solicitor and barrister, and that's the divide between them. I mean, solicitors are incredibly intelligent individuals. They tend to do. That's where most of the money is in law, and most of the young people I assist go on to be solicitors. So I'm very fond of the solicitor profession, and it's booming. It's doing great for British business. But it tends to 90% of it is what we call non-contentious, not court-based. 90% of it is process. So think of the major departments are things like corporate. And corporate is dealing with mergers and acquisitions.
Or housing or something like that.
Yeah, well, property is a huge one, but it tends to be commercial property in the city.
Okay.
And that's where most of the money is and the jobs are for my social mobility young people.
So talk to me about what you're doing with young people. What is it exactly?
Well, I got to a sunny 2011 spring, and I had just paid off all my student debts. I mean, I didn't have an easy life. I grew up normal. You know, the one thing I always say to the young people is that I ate Safeway Savers breakfast cereal, and every day I craved Kellogg's, and so now I have Kellogg's in my house right now. And because I was just determined that one day I would be able to afford. I probably shouldn't promote a brand, but other cereals are available. But you know, I grew up normal, as I would put it, and thanks to the law that I do, you know, by 2011. I felt I qualified in 2003, so your viewers can tell sometimes it took a while to pay off the large amounts of debts.
How much did you get into debt?
Oh, well, I had the state debt, and I had, I think, 35,000 additional debt, which would now only be bigger. But I felt sort of happier, freer, and I thought it was time to give back. And I started volunteering. I volunteered for two charities. I volunteered for the Social Mobility Foundation, for whom I have stayed a volunteer, and they are incredibly important. They're nationwide. They help thousands of young people, not just in law. They have a programme called the Aspiring Professionals Programme, and it helps young people who want to get any sort of professional job. And it matches them up with mentors, and it runs training sessions. It teaches what we now call soft skills, because I've been through that. We developed the idea that our young people might need to be trained in these soft skills. Young people who are applying for graduate jobs or who get a university test might well be taught something called the Watson-Glaser test by me. So I volunteer to do that for the Social Mobility Foundation. And mostly I mentor for them. And in the 13 years I've done it for them, sometimes I've had a couple of mentees because there haven't been enough mentors. Okay. So sometimes there aren't enough lawyers who are volunteering their time, so they say, Stephen, will you do too? And I was, of course.
So is it always lawyers that work with this charity? Or?
No, the Social Mobility Foundation does any professional job.
So
I think it even does media.
Me, I could
yeah,
do it.
I think you can.
I might do that.
I think there is a journalist route. There's the political route, I know that. There's a doctors. And I think it's helping young people from less disadvantaged backgrounds just really access the professionals. Because what I have realised, I'd never met a barrister until probably during university. I met my first barrister. I'd always wanted to be one, but I'd never met one. And I have noticed, and you do notice, and I have I've seen other people with children now, if you've got a parent who knows what they're doing, if you've got a parent, then it does help and assist you. And what the Social Mobility Foundation does with its mentoring programme is really bridge that gap. And then at the same time, I volunteered for another charity just to sit as a moot judge. That's all I did. Sign up to Big Voice London, sit as a moot judge. And I never left them. And I helped them. We formed a management committee. We became a charity. We had to get regulated. We had to do safeguarding and put in all sorts of systems and protective, because you want to be a proper charity. You know, it's got to be done by the book. I'm quite by the book in character. And my charity, Big Voice London, which is now BVL, we help hundreds of children every year through a series of projects.
And are these mainly disadvantaged kids, or just?
Yeah.
So if anyone's watching and wants to get in touch with the charity,
they should.
And what kind of ages are they?
16, 17, so it's sixth form. I mean, to come here, I left. We've got a project running at the moment with Cumberland Lodge, where we've got some of our young people doing a residential course on the rule of law. And I left to come here. I can't drive, so I came in a taxi. And I talked to my taxi driver about it. And he's going to get his son wants to be an accountant, so he's going to register with SMF. But BVL, you know, young people should and come join us. We also need volunteers of young people who aspire to be lawyers. That's another thing that we help with.
And so BVL is the Big Voice London. So
yes.
That's London. But the other charity, you said, is a national charity.
Yes, but one of my proudest achievements as chair of BVL was taking it national, which we did during the pandemic. So we're actually going to completely rebrand because calling yourself London doesn't work if you're now a national
Because a lot of our viewers might be wanting to do that, and they're thinking that they can't do it because they're not London.
Yes, and they must know that they can. We are now nationwide in the jurisdiction of England and Wales, because of course Scotland has its own legal system. So it's very difficult to sort of. It feels very alien to me. It's a barrier that probably non-lawyers don't feel, but it means something to me. And we partner up with serious partners. We do two projects with the Supreme Court, We do one with the Law Commission.
Wow.
I mean, this with Cumberland Lodge. I mean, Cumberland Lodge is a royal charity. You know, we had Baroness Hale came as a guest to the first night of this is the third of the residentials. And we get our young people to genuinely access law. So I have sat in a room where 30 young people, we were still London then, but so they were from Tower Hamlets and Bethnal Green, and they'd engaged over 13 weeks. They'd given 7 hours a week of their time to learn corporate insolvency law, and they gave a presentation on corporate insolvency law, which was intelligent and incisive.
Oh, incredible.
They can learn.
They can learn. So listen, if people want to get in touch with your charity, what's the website? Where do they need to go?
So you put into Google Big Voice London, because although it's national, the branding's changing, put that in because it's the easiest way to get us. For the Social Mobility Foundation, put into a search engine Social Mobility Foundation, and you follow the websites through and you sign up to the projects. I mean,
the Social Mobility Foundation is a national thing.
Yes.
For lots of different types of
different
jobs, not just that.
Not just law.
And again, there's 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
Yes.
Do that.
Yes.
That's incredible.
And it's very rewarding. One of the things I like to tell the young people is that it's very easy to grow up thinking that nobody cares about you. But actually, people are out there and they do care. You know, they will genuinely give up their time, and people, you know, will want you to succeed. And we have such a wealth of talent in this country. I mean, it's almost a crying shame to waste it. I mean, I will get very political here, but it's a disgrace if we waste this talent.
It is absolutely. Listen, Stephen, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and not through the telly, but actually to get you in the studio and hear what you do. Thanks. Thank you so much, and a pleasure hearing all the things that Stephen does. That's Steven Barrett. He's a lawyer and a writer. Right, well, if you just tuned in, it's just gone 20 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, the mini debate, I'll be discussing the new Scottish hate crime laws and why a pensioner was carted off by cops into a police van. Poor woman, poor Morag, she's 74. But next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban?
Dubes & Co. Weekdays from 6 p.m.
You think this country needs new gas power stations? Apparently, this will all be about trying to get some form of energy security. Rishi Sunak has upset people today with this suggestion, people saying that actually this would do more damage to climate change than it would do good. Where are you on it, Richard?
I'll tell you exactly where. We need a lot more gas power stations and nuclear power stations because quite often the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. Last week, we imported 16% of all our electricity because we haven't got enough capacity in the UK, and we're now totally over-reliant on renewables.
The part of the problem is the lack of storage capacity, which the government has finally got round to addressing. I think this as backup is actually quite a sensible idea. But they are not doing anything, as far as I can tell. At the moment, it will be retrofitted to have storage capability, which seems to be utterly bonkers. I mean, anyone who's got solar panels, you know very well you're storing up energy. So it's about storage as much as production. And they could have gone, 20 years ago, we could have had nuclear power. We could have done more. We haven't looked far enough ahead in the future, and we are in grave danger of making the same mistake. I mean, the other side of this is, what is the difference going to be? Blackouts are, they're irritating and...
Irritating? It'd be disastrous. It would destroy our economy.
Well, they would be now, but, some of us remember 3-day weeks and things like that. And in fact, I grew up thinking that everybody had, at least a couple of days a week when they had to eat off a primer stove and things.
This is, again, I don't want to harp on, but this is one of the problems in the politics in our country, isn't it? So many politicians, they just think in election cycles. Absolutely. They just think, what can I do and say to get my own backside re-elected at the next general election? They're not always looking ahead. Actually, politics aside, what is genuinely the best thing for this country?
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon. It's 24 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome if you've just tuned in. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban? Rishi Sunak faces a significant challenge next week as MPs will debate his proposal to ban smoking, which has drawn criticism from former Prime Ministers and his ex-Home Secretary. Now, the ban will involve raising the smoking age until it encompasses the entire population. That's alongside bans on disposable vapes. The legislation is expected to... So... I'm joined by former advisor to the Bank of England, Roger Gewolb. Roger, what do you make of this? A lot of people are saying it's a bit of a nanny state, but he could be looking at it from a financial angle, which would save potentially the NHS a lot of money.
Hi, Nana. Yeah, I think it's Richie just clutching at more straws. I mean, you know, we had Richie worrying about putting chess boards in public parks, and then we had Rishi, you know, and his conferences on artificial intelligence. I was saying that's probably because there's not a lot of the real stuff around him. And Rishi concentrating on all sorts of things that are relevant far into the future, rather than concentrating on all the things that he's failed and failing in, such as his promises, such as shoring up the defenses of this country as we're looking at the prospect of war with a very small W. I don't think it's that likely, but people are certainly concerned with the cost of living crisis, immigration, all these things. He just doesn't address these, and he just talks about these lofty subjects that really are not critical to people today because he's run out of things to say about them.
Some people might argue that actually, look, the NHS spends an absolute fortune. There are thousands and thousands of people who die each year needlessly because of tobacco. And in actual fact, if it were invented today, they probably would not be allowed to be on sale. Is he not right to focus on things like that? I mean, think of the billions we could save the NHS.
Think of the billions we could save the NHS by cutting out the zillions of middle managers paid huge salaries in the planet's most diverse organization, all the diversity managers and experts. He could save all that money tomorrow afternoon by sacking them all. Sure, he's got a point. Smoking is unhealthy. He didn't think that one up. But we've got so much more urgent things to deal with, and he's got his political future to deal with, which is not looking very good.
It's not looking good at all, and everybody seems to be deserting the party as well. But, yeah. I mean, the argument is, some people are saying that, oh, it's a bit of a nanny state. Do you subscribe to that argument? Or do you
that's a different side to the question. That's a different issue. And is it a nanny state to tell people? I mean, go to France and tell people they can't smoke. I don't think they'd wear it. Go to Spain and it would be the same situation. Is it a nanny state or is it not? I think it probably is a bit of a nanny state. If people do want to smoke, then I guess they should be able to smoke. But he certainly can introduce all the legislation on advertising and all the things that tempt people, particularly young people, into smoking. He can, as far as I'm concerned, make those as rigid and onerous as he wants. But at the end of the day, you can't, I don't think, start arresting people in the street for having a fag.
What about the argument that some people say that actually, if you were to stop people from smoking and cigarettes weren't purchased, the government would lose a lot of money in terms of tax revenue?
I'm sure that's not something that Rishi has overlooked, but he's probably countered it by, as I say, he's clutching at straws. He's got nothing else to talk about at this point.
Well, Roger, let me bring in Bill Rammell. He's a former advisor to the bank. Oh, you're the former advisor to the Bank of England. Bill Rammell is actually a former Labour minister. Bill, what do you think about this? Is Rishi clutching at straws? That's what Roger is saying, or is he right to point out the dangers of cigarette and try and sort of get rid of them forever?
I mean, look, I broadly support the ban, as do over 70% of the electorate. But I think Rishi Sunak's almost exclusive focus on this, when he vacillates and fails on so many other issues, really does demonstrate his weakness. You know, there's virtually no legislation being brought to the House of Commons because every time he does bring something, he risks division and defeat from his own side. And I think when this comes to a vote next Tuesday, it's going to reinforce that weakness, because I think a significant number of his own MPs are going to vote against him. But on the substance of the issue, I actually think this is a welcome measure. There's huge damage that's done by smoking. You know, it accounts deaths from tobacco account for half of the difference in life expectancy between rich and poor. And I think this could make a significant contribution. And actually, my experience is the electorate are ahead of politicians when it comes to smoking. I remember when it was a free vote when I was an MP to bring in the smoking ban in public places. And I was concerned, was it a step too far? Was it the so-called nanny state? And I did a poll of my own constituency, and over 2/3 were in favour of the ban. So I think this is the right way forward. But I think, you know, the fact that Sunak appears to be focusing on this as opposed to so many other things like, you know, cutting waiting lists in the health service, the lack of a social care plan, it demonstrates the weakness of his position.
But he would argue that, well, what he's doing is something that... I mean, look, to be frank, he's probably not going to be long in the position long enough to actually instil any of this. This is all just a pipe dream as far as I can see, because he's probably going to lose his job. But he would probably argue that actually this is part of the plan to save the NHS, Bill.
Well, it's a small contribution. I mean, yeah, the costs of people dying from smoking are about £4 billion a year. I mean, bearing in mind, this is a plan that will take a significant period of years to effectively outlaw smoking. Yes, it's a small contribution, but, you know, he ought to be now focusing on cutting waiting lists, they've increased office, but there's still no plan for social care.
So yes or no, then, is Rishi right to focus on banning smoking? Bill, yes or no?
Not to focus on it.
He's not right to do that. And Roger Giewald, yes or no?
No.
He's not right. Well, listen, thank you so much to both of you, former Labour Minister Bill Rammell and also former advisor to the Bank of England, Roger Giewald. Really good to talk to you both. Well, you're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Still to come. We'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel of broadcast from columnist Lizzie Cundy, also former Labour advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. But first, let's get your latest news with Aaron Armstrong.
Good evening, it's 5:32, I'm Aaron Armstrong. The Australian Prime Minister's paid tribute to the extraordinary bravery shown by members of the public and first responders after a mass knife attack near Bondi Beach in Sydney, which left 6 people dead. If you're watching on TV, you can see the moment the assailant was confronted by a man holding a bollard. The 40-year-old male offender was known to police, however, they don't believe his motive was terror-related. A 9-month-old baby is in critical condition. The child's mother has died in hospital. The attack ended when a lone female officer confronted the man and shot him dead. Iranian special forces have seized a container ship and 25 crew members off the coast of the UAE. The vessel, which has links to Israel, was passing through the Strait of Hormuz. It comes amid rising tensions in the region, with the US warning an Iranian attack on Israel is likely to happen sooner rather than later. Iran has vowed to retaliate for an airstrike on its consulate in Syria almost 2 weeks ago, which killed a number of senior officers. President Biden's closing the gap on Donald Trump, according to a new poll, highlighting just how close November's presidential election could be. The poll by the New York Times and Siena College found 45% say they'd vote for the president, compared to 46% for Mr. Trump. It means they're now virtually tied, with Joe Biden's standing amongst Democratic voters improving. I Am Maximus has won the Grand National at Aintree after changes to safety rules saw the highest number of horses cross the finish line since 1992. The 7-to-1 joint favourite romped home by several lengths to win for jockey Paul Townsend and trainer Willie Mullins. They scooped more than £500,000 in prize money. You can sign up to GB News Alerts for the latest. Scan the QR code on your screen or go to our website for more details. Now it's back to Nana.
Still to come in the mini-debate, the Scottish new hate crime laws and why a pensioner was carted off by the cops in a police van. Next, though, we'll continue with the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban?
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
I wonder, is this the fundamental distinction we need to make between Islam, which is a private religion people may practice freely amongst themselves, and Islamism, when you try and place those values upon other people, place that way of being, force it on people who don't want it?
Tom, I have been very much clear about this thing that Islam is a religion and people are free to follow that religion in the UK, in a free Western society. So we have no problem with people following their religion as long as it is not being imposed onto the wider society. And when you talk about drawing a distinction between Islam and Islamism, people like me, you and me, we are drawing that distinction. We're trying to maintain that distinction. But if you look at the commentator from the Muslim community, some commentator, they would like to blur this line and they would ask you, what is Islamism? Where does it exist? Sorry, it does exist. We see it. And the teacher, this incident is an epitome of that kind of, ideology being prevalent, in our society.
Khadija, do you worry that these views are typical for some sections of society? Do you think that there's a problem with some Muslim men, that they have perhaps views that we don't consider to be British values?
There are certain readings of religion which are misogynistic, which are discriminatory, which are homophobic. We need to be honest about it. We need to be calling it out whenever we hear these kind of views. It's been a long time that we are letting these kind of ideologies crawling in, spreading tentacles in British society, and we are just ignoring it in the name of respecting people's culture and religion. You are not suppressed in the UK.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 38 minutes after 5 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? No, sorry, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's time for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, is Richie right to focus on a cigarette ban? He's facing a significant challenge next week as MPs will debate his proposal to ban smoking. A lot of criticism has been drawn out of it. Former Prime Ministers and his ex-Home Secretary, to name but a few. The ban will involve raising the smoking age until it encompasses the entire population. That is alongside bans of disposable vapes. The legislation is expected to advance with Labour's backing. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is Rishi right to focus on such a ban? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by broadcaster and author and journalist. Are you a journalist as well?
Yeah,
Lizzie
I'm everything.
And also former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. Right, I'm going to go to Lizzie first on this one.
Well, excuse the pun, Nana, but this is a pipe dream. I mean, I think it actually is a smoke screen because he's not concentrating on what he should have been. I mean, look at his pledges. How about he makes one of those work? We're in a high cost of living, the immigration crisis, and he's going on about cigarettes. Look, we all know cigarettes aren't good for us and not to do it, but this is just ludicrous. It doesn't even make any sense at all. So stop the nanny state approach. You know, the way forward is education, parents' influence. But this Rishi, he's got to give it up. I'm sorry, but he's at the fag end of his career, and it says it all. It says it all. He's going to be the butt of everyone's jokes.
Oh, I do like it. So many of them. Can you match that, James?
Oh, my God, no, I can't. But I agree with basically all of that. What's he want to be remembered for? Banning smoking in the 2060s or whatever.
But that would save lives. I mean, and a lot of money from the NHS as well.
So there are loads of ways in which you can reduce smoking without banning it. And I don't, you know, I'm an ex-smoker. I'm pleased to be an ex-smoker, but I think banning things because you can't think of anything else to do. Like Rishi Sunak can't do anything. We got huge numbers of problems which he isn't dealing with. You know, we've discussed all of these things week after week after week, and he's decided, no, he's not going to do any of those things. He's not going to focus on any of those. He's going to stop people smoking in the future.
I can just see it now, and I feel sorry for some of his Home Secretaries that he's got rid of. They're trying to say, look, Rishi, can we focus on the immigration? Hey, how about this ban? I got this ban on the cigarettes. I got another idea.
I think he's just basically buying time before he gets thrown out. And he's becoming the laughingstock. He really needs to wave that handkerchief and just give it up.
Do you think... Really? No, but with all seriousness, now, I hate smoking. Right? Yeah. I'm an ex-smoker. I'm the worst. Even if I'm walking behind somebody in their slipstream of cigarettes, I get angry. You know, I think, it's disgusting, even though I'm walking alongside a heavily polluted road, you know, with carbon monoxide breathing through my veins. But the point is this. He has what he's saying is he wants to save the health service a lot of money and make people more healthy. Surely that's a good thing.
Saving the health service money, good thing. More healthy, good thing. There are loads of ways in which you could do those, which don't involve a future... Like, also, how many people is he going to stop from smoking each year? It's only... First of all, it's 18-year-olds who won't smoke, and then 19-year-olds, and then 20-year-olds, and then... You know, by 30 years' time, maybe it's improving people's health. If you want to improve people's health, focus on that. If you want to save money for the NHS, then, you know, chuck out some of the privateers who are pulling some money out of it, or whatever, you know, whatever you think is... Whatever you think is the right way to do it, then focus on those things. And not on this. I mean, the idea that you can ban your way to also this future
remember the smoking ban that came in though, and most people thought it would be unworkable, and it worked.
Well, yeah, it did work, and I mean, I remember the days being on an aeroplane and my dad lighting up a cigarette as a little kid.
Madness,
I mean, he can't believe
madness.
But how far we come, but he can't be banning it. How about he just, you know, increase the tax on, you know, tobacco, more education? He can't ban, and it also doesn't make sense because this happens after you're born the 1st of January 2009.
And it's already happening. The number of people smoking is decreasing every year anyway. So it's not like there's suddenly this new surge of smokers. Young people aren't starting smoking. There's issues with vapes, but...
But why doesn't Rishi concentrate on his 5 pledges? I mean, get one of them to work.
I think he would love everybody to forget them.
Sorry, stop the boats, stop the boats. He hasn't stopped... I mean, he couldn't stop a pedalo, let's be honest.
Unfortunately, all Rishi Sunak's ideas have gone up in smoke. How sad. Man, what do you think, though? This show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome some of our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got 4 of you. Yes, right, who should we start with? I'm going to go to Alan. Alan in London. Rishi Sunak, is he right to focus on a cigarette ban?
Hiya, Nana. Well, he's going to be out of a job soon, isn't he? So every PM needs their legacy. You know, Boris had his push bikes, so many a ride was had in London thanks to Boris. And Rishi was head boy at Winchester. Now he's just proving he's no more than a prefect. He's like his head boy at Westminster. And it is ridiculous. There's far more pressing things which need sorting out. You know, alcohol, obesity, also causes a problem for NHS.
And maybe that new zombie drug as well that's hitting the streets, that flesh-eating zombie bug. You might want to you might want to get onto that. Let's go to Miranda Richardson, not the Miranda Richardson, but our Miranda Richardson in Northamptonshire. Miranda, what do you think?
Afternoon, Nana. I've got one for you. It's all smoke and mirrors again. You know? Crazy. And again, I agree with the entire panel today. There's no pledges being sorted. There's nothing being talked about. But I tell you what, we'll chuck this in now and see how we go. At the end of the day, start with education. Like I say, the decline in smokers is huge. Me also, ex-smoker. You know, the decline is there. So start with education.
I agree with you,
if we invest in education, that's where we change obesity, we change alcohol.
Do you know, Miranda, somebody told me that if I don't stop smoking, I'll have lips like an anus.
Oh, yes.
Like that. And that stopped me in my tracks. I'm so vain. David Balm in Watford.
Like you, Nana, I'm an ex-smoker. I haven't smoked for 33 years. But I remember the days when they had advertising on the cars going around Formula 1 and snooker, and they banned those, and that would stop smoking. And then they banned all the advertising, and they banned this, and they banned that. If people want to smoke, they'll smoke. It's great headlines because if he gets Labour support, it gets through Parliament. He's got an act under his name. But someone said, what about obesity? Let's do something proper about getting educating children about the dangers of smoke, the dangers of eating fast food, and how you can live a better, healthier life.
Well, that would be the way, wouldn't it? And Gareth Wyn-Jones in Snowdonia.
Yeah, again, we want to be talking about freedom of choice, and he's taking another freedom of choice from people. You know, it's ridiculous. If he wanted to do something, why doesn't he sort out the illegal drug problems we've got in this country? This country is rife with all kinds of different drugs that are illegal, which are killing our youngsters. You know, that would be something to address. Smoking is something that's always happened, and there'll always be people smoking. I'm partial to the odd nice Havana cigar, to be honest with you, so I will not be quitting the odd puff here and there for Rishi and the rest of them. And I've come to the age where I don't really care.
Yeah,
and
I
do agree as well, we should be educating the next generation that smoking's bad and eating rubbish is bad, and backing British agriculture.
Yeah.
Look at the bike, look at the dog, look at the lovely view we've got up here.
Listen, Gareth, thank you so much for your thoughts. That's Gareth Wyn-Jones in Snowdonia, David Balm in Watford, also Miranda Richardson in Northamptonshire, and Alan Cook in London. Lovely to talk to you. Those are my voices. Let's see what you've been saying. Johnny says, no, his sole focus should be on sorting immigration out. He's got his priorities all wrong. Steve says we are all adults. We don't need everything banning just because it's unhealthy. Are we not free to live our lives how we wish? I don't smoke anymore, but they'll come for whatever your coping mechanism is next. Brian says, yes, needs banning. Disgusting habit that kills thousands and destroys the health of even more. Eventually, the NHS will be free of having to treat health issues directly related to smoking and consequently be able to concentrate on treating genuine illness. And Simon says, of course, he shouldn't be focused on smoking bans. Far more important issues, chief among them being the invasion of our southern shores. Completely right. Well, listen, coming up, my quickfire quiz. I test the panel on some of the stories that caught their eye this week. But next up, my mini debate. Scotland's new hate crime laws. They've gone all awry.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for some of us compared to recent weeks, but there is still plenty of showers around, with low pressure situated quite close to the north of the UK. Higher pressure does sit out towards the south and the east, but it's this cold front that's going to bring some cloud and rain to parts of England and Wales through the rest of this evening. It does eventually clear its way south and eastwards overnight and into the start of Sunday, leaving quite a dry picture for most of us into the early hours of Sunday morning. Still some showers around across parts of Scotland, and these could turn heavy in places. But under those clear skies, temperatures dropping off quite nicely. Around 7 or 8 degrees across the south and down to around 2 or 3 across parts of Scotland. We could even see some frost in places. So that does leave a bit of a chillier start to Sunday across parts of Scotland. Those showers quite quickly pushing in from the west though and spreading their way eastwards through the day. Further south, a drier start, but we will see some cloud bubbling up through the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine across southeastern parts of England. It will be a bit of a cooler day than Saturday as well, highs in the south around 14 or 15, and in the north around 9 or 10, but a quite brisk wind here. Through Monday, those showers become much more widespread across the UK, moving through relatively quickly on a brisk northwesterly wind, so it will feel a little cooler than over the weekend. Those showers continue into the start of the next week, and those temperatures a little below average, but recovering closer to average through the end of the week.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Now, a 74-year-old woman, Morag MacDonald Brown, found herself unjustly accused of a hate crime after enduring 2 years of abuse from a neighbour, despite being the victim of the alleged verbal abuse and garden vandalism. Morag was unexpectedly arrested by police following an accusation of using an ableist slur, which is one against people who are disabled. The incident left her deeply traumatised. It highlights concerns about the implications of the new hate crime legislation. So joining me, James Snyder, and also the fabulous Lizzie Cundy. God, James, this is awful, isn't it?
It sounds like carting off women in their 70s is bad, and it seems like it was a mistake. Of course, hate crime should be dealt with. I don't know whether
the non-crime hate incident, though. Somebody reported it, but it was her neighbour. But it was
it was wrong. Clearly, something has gone.
But she ended up in the police van.
It's appalling. It's absolutely appalling. Yusuf should be ashamed of himself. And I say, come back, Jimmy Cranky. All is forgiven. Honestly,
I wouldn't say that if I were you, because what she's got is Hamza Useless, which is her protege.
But how is this going to be policed? It's absolutely disgusting. Absolutely ludicrous.
So, Morag, just for you, I hope you're OK. We are disgusted by that as well. And Hamza Useless, well, I mean, less said about that, the better, Morag. But sorry about that. But it's time now for the quickfire quiz. It's the part of the show where I test my panel on some of the other topics hitting the headlines. Lizzie Cundy, your buzzer, please. James Snyder, your buzzer, please. Question 1, play along at home. What is the new minimum age limit to use WhatsApp in the UK? Is it 16, 13 or 10? Ooh, this is a joint one. Lizzie Cundy. B, which 13. Is what? 13. The answer is, James Snyder, what do you think?
I think that's right.
I'll say something else just in case she's wrong. It is B. It's too late.
OK.
Right.
It was obviously going to be that.
Closest answer wins. Millions of people across North America looked to the skies on Monday to witness a total solar eclipse across the continent. The first place in the US plunged into darkness was Eagle Pass, Texas. When did the area last see a total eclipse? What's his answer? James Schneider.
1832.
Lizzie Cundy.
1830.
Ooh.
1397, so I think you're the closest, Lizzie Cundy, only by 3 years.
Well,
although
that makes a difference in my
Right, open question, question 3. How did hardest geezer Russ Cook celebrate the end of his Africa run? Lizzie Cundy.
He had a cocktail. I can't try to remember, the raspberry daiquiri, I think.
Raspberry daiquiri, and you? Especially Buzzy.
Cocktail. Alcoholic beverage.
Yes.
Gin and tonic.
Gin and tonic. The answer is a strawberry daiquiri.
Oh, strawberry, nearly.
Strawberries.
I think that's very good.
Right, question... True or false? Question 4. The Loch Ness Centre in the Highlands has asked NASA to help with its search for the mystical creature. True or false? Lizzie Cundy.
It's true.
Especially Buzzy.
True.
No, say false. False, just in case you're wrong. She did it. It's true. It is true. You are right. She is right. Finally, last question. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak offered a fulsome apology to fans, which... OK. What's the answer?
Samba Adidas.
Very good. Lizzie Cundy?
It is A.
The trainers were, of course, A. I was asking you what the trainers were. They're Adidas Sambas. Rishi Sunak apologised to all fans of Samba Adidas for being accused of ruining their credibility as he was pictured in a pair. Well, listen, on today's show, I've been asking, has the Grand National passed its sell-by date? According to our Twitter poll, 37% of you say yes, 62% of you say no. And in our second poll, is Rishi right to focus on a cigarette ban? 15% of you say yes, just 84% of you say no.
Interesting.
By those results.
Interesting.
I've got to say a huge thank you, though, to my panel. Broadcaster and columnist Lizzie Cundy. Thank you so much, Lizzie.
Thank you.
And also former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. Up next, it's Saturday 5. I'll be back tomorrow at 3 o'clock, same time, same place, with the fabulous, fabulous panel, Danny Kenny and Christine Hamilton. Enjoy the weather.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So it's been a bit of a drier day for most of us, but there has been a few showers around. Low pressure never too far away out towards the north of the UK, but higher pressure down towards the south and the west does bring something briefly more settled. There have been those showers around and they will continue through much of Saturday evening, pushing in from the west across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, and we could even see some snow continuing across the high ground here. Elsewhere though, generally turning much drier through the evening, with those clear skies allowing temperatures to drop into the single figures, around 7 or 8 degrees across the south, but even lower further north, perhaps some frost in places. So a chilly start across Scotland, Northern England and Northern Ireland, but those showers quickly pushing in from the west again as we go through Sunday morning and into the afternoon. Further south, after a bit of a drier start to the morning, there will be some sunshine through the first part of the day, but some cloud bubbling up as well, and we could see the odd 1 or 2 showers across Wales and into Northern England. Less warm than we saw on Saturday, highs of 14 or 15 in the south and a little bit closer to average further north. Monday starts a widely showery day across the UK. Bands of showers push their way south and eastwards through Monday morning, and then there will be some breaks and some sunnier spells between those showers, but they could be particularly heavy in the north, and a brisk northwesterly wind will make it feel cooler. Showers continue through the first part of next week with temperatures below average, but turning a little milder through the second half of the week.
That warm.
This is your chance to win our biggest prize of the year so far. First, there's a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash for you to spend this summer. Then, we want to send you on a bespoke 7-night small boat cruise for 2 worth £10,000. Thanks to Variety Cruises, you'll be able to choose from any of their 2025 Greek adventures and discover Greece like never before. And with flights, meals, drinks and excursions included, all you have to do is relax. We'll also give you these terrific travel treats. minutes. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text prize to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 26th of April. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them